There are moments in life when the world feels like it pauses, not to hold you still, but to invite you into a deeper way of seeing. And if you're here, listening now, maybe this is one of those moments for you. Take a slow breath with me, the kind you take early in the morning when everything is still untouched by the noise of the day. Imagine stepping into a quiet space, soft, open, almost like the inside of a dawn. In that gentle stillness, the world feels a little more honest, a little less rushed. And suddenly, things you once believed were hidden begin to reveal themselves. Not because someone kept them from you, not because they were locked behind some cosmic curtain, but because your awareness has finally ripened enough to hold them. This is the strange and beautiful truth. You were never separated from wisdom. You were only waiting for the moment you could recognize it without fear. There's a tenderness to that realization, isn't there? The sense that life has been patient with you, extraordinarily patient, letting you grow into the version of yourself who is capable of receiving deeper truths without collapsing under them. And the first truth that reveals itself is this: you are not standing outside of reality, trying to figure it out. You are the field in which reality expresses itself. Most people go through life believing they are merely observers, watching events happen, reacting to circumstances, hoping that if they think hard enough or behave correctly enough, something outside will finally shift. But consciousness doesn't work that way. The quantum field doesn't work that way. Reality doesn't bloom from the outside in. It blooms from within you outward, the way a seed breaks open in the dark, long before anyone ever sees the stem reaching toward the sun. When this truth lands, even softly, it causes something inside you to loosen. The old questions begin to dissolve. The old struggles start to fall off your shoulders. That feeling of having to earn or prove your place in the universe starts to fade like fog in warm light. Because suddenly you realize you were never a visitor here. You were never auditioning for worthiness. You've always belonged to the fabric of existence itself. And that realization can be overwhelming. But not in a heavy way, in a liberating way. Like discovering the lock you've been trying to open from the outside was never actually locked. It only needed to be seen from the right angle. As you stand in that quiet inner space, you may notice how much tension you've been carrying, how long you've lived, as if the universe were something distant, something to chase or convince. And now, with just a shift of perception, something inside you softens, almost involuntarily, like the body remembering how to breathe after years of holding its breath. You realize you don't have to push the river anymore. You don't have to force yourself into states you're not ready for. You don't have to chase signs, or beg for clarity, or wrestle with the future as if it were running away from you. Because the moment awareness opens, life begins flowing with you, not around you. It's a bit like watching sunlight find its way through the branches of an old tree. The light doesn't force its way through. It doesn't argue with the leaves. It simply shines. And the world rearranges itself around that illumination. In the same way, when your consciousness expands even a fraction, the entire structure of your reality begins rearranging itself in response. Not because you commanded it, but because that's the nature of the field you are part of. You are the space where form arises. You are the awareness that gives meaning to experience. You are the presence that shapes the world, even when you think you're doing nothing at all. And when this becomes clear, the old patterns of striving lose their grip. The frantic need to get somewhere or be someone relaxes. The identity you built out of fear, out of survival, out of comparison, begins to melt away. Almost gently, almost gratefully. It's like remembering yourself after a long period of pretending. There's something exquisite about that moment. A quiet homecoming. A returning to your own center, the place inside you that no disappointment has ever touched. No failure has ever dimmed. No fear has ever truly damaged. That place inside you has always existed. It's here now. It's listening with you. And as you breathe into that space, you may start to sense a subtle truth rising from beneath your thoughts. You are not a small self trying to navigate a big universe. You are a vast awareness playing for a while inside a human experience. When that truth enters your system, not just your mind, but your nervous system, your emotional body, your subtle field. You feel something unexplainable and yet unmistakably real. A kind of opening, a clarity without words, a knowing that doesn't need proof. It feels like someone turned on the lights in a room you've lived in for years. You start to realize that the weight you've been carrying wasn't the weight of life. It was the weight of forgetting who you are. And the relief you feel now isn't coming from answers, it's coming from recognition. Recognition that you're not here to fight reality. You're here to participate in its unfolding. Not as a separate entity, but as the very consciousness through which it unfolds. And when this recognition deepens, even slightly, something beautiful happens. Your relationship with effort changes. You stop pushing because you start trusting. You stop controlling because you start aligning. You stop striving because you begin allowing. Allowing is not passivity. Allowing is intelligence, cosmic intelligence. It's the wisdom of the ocean knowing how to hold a wave without forcing it. You become like that ocean, deep, steady, spacious, letting the surface shift as it must, while remaining rooted in an awareness untouched by surface turbulence. And from that inner stillness, creation begins not through force, but through coherence, not through willpower, but through alignment, not through pressure, but through presence. You begin to sense that life is not something happening to you, it is something happening through you. Your desires, your insights, your intuition, they're not random. They're the universe speaking from within you, trying to guide you back to the frequency of who you really are. So as we begin this journey together, I invite you to settle into this simple but profound awareness. You are not here to discover your power. You are here to remember it. And remembering doesn't require effort. It requires openness, just as a flower opens when it's ready, not when it's forced. Your consciousness opens when the moment is ripe. And that moment might be now. Because if these words are finding you, it means the field within you has begun to shift. The deeper truths are no longer overwhelming. They are calling, and the part of you that once felt too small to hold them is no longer that small. You're stepping back into yourself, into the field that has always been you, into the awareness where reality takes shape, and from here, everything begins. 1. The state within you speaks louder than any words you could ever say. There is a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when you finally pause long enough to feel the truth moving quietly beneath the surface of your life. It comes the way dawn arrives slowly, almost shy at first, revealing what was always there but rarely acknowledged. And in that quiet recognition, you begin to understand that the universe has never once responded to the sentences you spoke, the affirmations you repeated, or the declarations you whispered into the air with trembling hope. It has always responded to the vibration underneath them, the emotional current threading through your being like a hidden river shaping the landscape of your experience. You can tell the world, "I'm fine," and still carry the heaviness of unspoken sorrow. You can say, "I'm ready," while holding doubt in your chest like a stone. You can declare abundance with your lips, while scarcity tightens around your breath. And without judgment, the universe listens not to the polished surface, but to the pulse underneath, the subtle hum of your inner space where your true beliefs quietly live. There's a tenderness in admitting that reality mirrors your inner frequency so faithfully. It's not a punishment, not a cosmic test you've failed, or a spiritual standard you haven't met. It's simply the nature of the field you belong to. The outer world rises to meet the inner one, the way a still lake reflects whatever stands above it. If the water trembles, the reflection wavers. If the water rests, the image becomes clear. And so it is with consciousness. Clarity outside begins with stillness within. Most of us spend years polishing the mirror, unaware that the distortion comes not from the glass, but from the storm we carry inside our chest. We try to say the right thing, recite positive words, shape our voice into hope, while the nervous system still speaks the language of fear, and the universe, gentle, consistent, unwavering, responds only to the language of vibration. Words may form the melody, but emotion is the instrument. When you begin to sense this, something deep inside starts to open. Not through force, but through recognition. You start to see that your inner state is not a secret the universe overlooks. It is the blueprint it follows. And in that understanding, the old tendency to push, to demand, to make things happen, begins to soften. Because you no longer look outward for signs of change. You start by tending the terrain within. It is humbling to realize how much of your life has been shaped by emotions you never consciously chose, quiet threads of insecurity woven through your childhood, remnants of old wounds, the echoes of past disappointments still vibrating in the body long after the mind has forgotten their stories. But this is where healing begins, not in correcting your words, but in soothing the vibration beneath them. The universe has never been waiting for you to speak better. It has been waiting for you to feel differently. The truth is that your inner state is not static. It breathes. It shifts. It responds. It evolves. And when you treat it with tenderness instead of judgment, it begins to reshape itself in ways that align with who you are becoming rather than who you were taught to be. The more gently you greet your own emotions, the more naturally they begin to harmonize. And as they harmonize, your life begins to soften around the edges. Imagine for a moment a lantern held in your palms. If the flame flickers wildly, its light dances unevenly across the walls. Yet when you shield it, steady it, breathe with it, the glow becomes warm and consistent. Your inner vibration is that flame, and the universe is the room illuminated by it. Every experience, every interaction, every outcome, each one shaped by the steadiness of your light rather than the eloquence of your voice. It is not your declarations that open doors, but the quiet power of your coherence. A heart at peace draws clarity. A mind grounded in trust draws opportunity. A spirit aligned with its true nature draws reality into alignment with it. And the most extraordinary part is this. The moment you stop performing a version of yourself and begin inhabiting the truth of yourself, the world shifts with a grace that feels almost miraculous. But it is not a miracle. It is resonance. It is physics. It is the law of the field responding to the tone of your being. When you understand this, you begin to approach your inner world differently. You stop wrestling with your emotions as if they are obstacles and start listening to them as if they are guides. You stop forcing yourself into positivity and start nurturing yourself into alignment. You stop using words to cover your wounds and begin using presence to heal them. And slowly, sometimes gradually, sometimes, in a single breath, the vibration you carry starts to rise. Not through effort, but through honesty. Not through striving, but through allowing. Not through perfecting yourself, but through meeting yourself exactly where you are. That is when your outer reality begins to shift in ways you once believed required effort or luck. Because now the universe is responding to a different frequency. A clearer one, a calmer one, a truer one. There is a wisdom in the quiet moments when you place a hand over your chest and simply notice what is living there. The tension, the fear, the longing, the hope. They are not flaws, they are signals, invitations. They show you the vibration you are sending out long before any words leave your mouth. And when you honor these signals, when you breathe into them, when you allow them to soften instead of suppressing them, you begin the gentle but powerful process of changing your entire energetic signature, and reality follows. It cannot do otherwise. Because the universe does not speak English or Vietnamese, or any language shaped by the mouth. It speaks the language of the heart, the nervous system, the electromagnetic field of your being. And in that language, only one question ever matters. What is the vibration you are living right now? Answer that with honesty, and you will understand why your life looks the way it does. Answer that with compassion, and you will begin to transform it, not through force, not through perfect words, but through the quiet, steady shift of the state within you, the only place real change has ever begun. 2. Invisible support is always present. There comes a point in every sincere inner journey when you begin to notice that life is far more intentional than it appears on the surface. Not in a dramatic, supernatural way, but in the quiet precision with which moments line up, people arrive, and circumstances unfold exactly when your inner world shifts. At first, you might dismiss these experiences as coincidences, as if the universe were simply shuffling events randomly and you happen to be in the right place at the right time. But when these alignments begin to repeat themselves with a rhythm too deliberate to ignore, something inside you softens. A recognition dawns: you are not walking through this existence alone. And this realization, gentle as it is, changes everything. Because the truth is that invisible support has always been moving with you, brushing lightly against your experience, the way a breeze touches your skin, felt but often unacknowledged. Every synchronicity, every unexpected helping hand, every closed door that quietly redirected you before you understood why, was part of a larger intelligence cooperating with your own field of consciousness. This intelligence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand your belief. It simply responds to the tone of your inner being, shaping possibilities around the frequency you hold. You might have noticed this in the subtle way certain people appear in your path at the exact moment you feel ready for change, or the way an idea rises in your mind just when you need clarity, or how life gently removes you from environments that no longer match who you are becoming. These moments are not random. They are replies, soft replies from the field that has been listening to you long before you learned how to listen to yourself. There is a comforting simplicity in understanding that synchronicities are not magic tricks or cosmic rewards. They are a language, the language of alignment, the language of resonance, the language of a universe that communicates not through words but through patterns, timing, and the effortless precision of right place, right moment, right insight. Most of us have been conditioned to believe we are solely responsible for pushing our lives forward. We were taught that progress comes through force, persistence, and control, as if the universe were an uncooperative landscape that must be conquered. But anyone who has truly walked through darkness, anyone who has ever fallen to their knees with exhaustion, confusion, or heartbreak knows that the turning point never comes from force. It comes from surrender. It comes from a moment when you stop insisting on your own timeline and allow life to lead you through the unseen paths it always kept open for you. It's in those surrendered moments that invisible support reveals itself most clearly, not as a miracle, but as a remembering. You begin to recognize that what you call luck is often the universe adjusting its currents around your new state of being. You begin to see that the support you thought you lacked was present long before you realized you needed it, and you begin to sense the quiet orchestration beneath the surface of your everyday life, the way your internal shifts subtly rearrange the outer world. If you think back, you may recall times when you were guided away from something you thought you wanted, only to discover later that leaving was an act of protection, or times when a delay felt like rejection, but eventually revealed itself as the perfect timing you couldn't have planned. Invisible support often shows up disguised as disappointment, redirection, or even stillness, because the universe is far more invested in your alignment than your expectations. This field of support doesn't operate with the urgency of the fearful mind. It moves with the elegance of deeper wisdom, arranging encounters and opportunities in ways that reflect not your anxieties, but your truest frequency. When your vibration is clouded by fear, the support often takes the form of pause, a gentle holding pattern. When your vibration becomes clearer, lighter, more coherent, that same support opens paths so effortlessly that you may look back and wonder how everything clicked together without your planning. The more you awaken to this, the more you stop asking, "Is anyone helping me?" and begin sensing, "Something has been helping me all along." That shift doesn't come from blind faith. It comes from experience, from watching your life repeatedly align in ways that no logic can fully explain. It comes from living long enough, hurting deeply enough, softening honestly enough, to see patterns where you once saw accidents. And as you deepen into this awareness, you start relating to life with a different kind of trust, not naive, not passive, but grounded trust. A trust that understands you are in conversation with the universe, even when you haven't said a word. A trust that knows the field around you is listening to the field within you. A trust that grows each time life whispers back to you through synchronicity, as if saying, "You're on the right path. Keep going. You're not alone." Invisible support is not something you summon. It is something you align with. It becomes clearer as your vibration becomes clearer. It becomes stronger as your awareness becomes steadier. And it becomes more visible as your inner world grows quieter. Because in the quiet, you notice what was always present. Think of it like tuning a radio. The signal was always broadcasting, but until you adjusted the dial, it sounded like noise. When your consciousness shifts, the noise becomes a message, the message becomes a pattern, and the pattern becomes a relationship with a universe that has been partnering with you since the moment you first drew breath. And perhaps the most healing part of this realization is understanding that you don't have to earn this support. You don't have to be perfect, enlightened, or endlessly positive. You only have to be honest. Honest with your feelings. Honest with your fears. Honest with the part of you that longs for something more real, more peaceful, more whole. Because invisible support doesn't respond to perfection. It responds to authenticity. It responds to the genuine vibration of your being, the one that emerges when you stop pretending and start allowing yourself to simply be. And when you live from that place even slightly, even imperfectly, the entire universe begins coordinating with you in ways that feel almost intimate. You don't chase opportunity, you meet it. You don't force clarity, you receive it. You don't cling to timing, you trust it. And you don't walk alone. You walk accompanied by an intelligence that has always known who you are becoming. You begin to understand that your life has never been accidental. That guidance has never been absent. That the field is always speaking. And now, finally, you're learning how to listen. 3. Emotions are the compass of the soul. There is a kind of wisdom that doesn't speak through thought or logic. A wisdom older than memory and quieter than intuition. A wisdom that lives in the subtle movements of your emotional body. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It doesn't try to convince you of anything. It simply rises and falls like an inner tide, revealing the truth of your alignment long before your mind can put that truth into words. And when life has carried you through enough darkness, enough detours, enough seasons of confusion, you begin to understand that your emotions were never the enemy. They were the guide, the only one that never lied to you. If you look back across the landscape of your life, you can probably see it now. The moments when your chest tightened and you ignored it, forcing yourself into situations that drained you because they made sense on paper, or because you feared disappointing someone, or because you were taught to trust logic over feeling. And then, much later, after the unraveling, after the exhaustion or heartbreak or collapse, you realized that the discomfort had been pointing you away from misalignment the whole time. The truth becomes undeniable the longer you live honestly. When your energy contracts, you are drifting away from yourself. When your energy expands, you are coming home. Expansion and contraction may sound abstract, but they are unmistakably physical. You know the difference profoundly, even if you've never named it. Expansion feels like breath returning after being held for too long. It feels like space opening in your chest, like clarity rising behind your eyes, like something inside you unfurling with relief. Expansion doesn't mean ease. Sometimes it comes with trembling because it asks you to grow. But even when it stretches you, it never crushes you. It feels like truth. Contraction, on the other hand, is a tightening, a hardening of the emotional body. It feels like stepping into a room where the air is too heavy, or walking toward something that makes your stomach clench, or hearing words that cause your shoulders to rise toward your ears as if to protect your heart. Contraction doesn't mean danger. Sometimes it simply points toward old wounds or outdated beliefs. But it always signals one thing: something here is out of alignment with who you truly are. The mind often tries to override this compass, insisting that the discomfort isn't a sign but a weakness, that the expansion isn't guidance but wishful thinking. For many years, you might have believed that being an adult means ignoring what you feel. pushing through the intuitive signals of your own body. You learn to make decisions from fear disguised as practicality, from logic disconnected from wisdom, from conditioning that told you emotions are unreliable. Yet when you pause and listen deeply, you discover that your emotions have always been the most honest part of you. They respond instantly to your internal truth, long before your mind constructs a narrative to justify or deny it. It takes a certain kind of maturity to finally trust your emotional compass, not emotional reactivity, not impulsive feeling, but the deeper vibration beneath the surface. This compass isn't interested in drama, it's interested in alignment. It doesn't pull you toward pleasure and away from pain. It pulls you toward authenticity and away from distortion. What expands your being is always in service of your evolution. What contracts you is always revealing where healing is needed or where you are abandoning yourself. And here is the beauty of this understanding: you no longer need to analyze your way through life. You don't need endless pros and cons lists, or sleepless nights trying to find certainty with your mind. The body already knows. The soul already knows. The expansion or contraction tells you everything you need to know about the reality you are creating with your vibration. You can feel the difference even in something as simple as a conversation. When someone speaks to you in a way that honors your truth, your energy expands subtly, like the heart opening its windows to light. When someone speaks from judgment or fear, your energy contracts, not because you are fragile, but because your being instinctively protects its integrity. Or think about choices you've made: relationships, careers, decisions about where to stay or when to leave. Look closely and you'll see that expansion was always the sign of alignment, and contraction was always the sign of departure from yourself. The emotional compass doesn't promise comfort, it promises truth. And the truth doesn't always align with your preferences. Sometimes, expansion leads you into uncertainty, into new versions of yourself you are not fully ready to embody, but can no longer deny. Sometimes contraction shows up in situations you once begged for, revealing that what you wanted has outgrown its usefulness. Emotions evolve as you evolve because they are part of the same field of consciousness, expressing itself through your life. The real transformation happens when you stop treating your emotions as signals to fix and start treating them as signals to follow. A tight chest may not mean turn back. It may mean wait, breathe, listen more carefully. An open heart may not mean run toward this immediately. It may mean something here is calling you to expand. The nuance is subtle, but the soul speaks in subtlety. And the more you pay attention, the more fluent you become in its language. Imagine standing at a crossroads in your life, one path lined with reasons, the other lined with resonance. Logic points you one way, but your emotional compass quietly points the other. This is where the journey deepens, because choosing resonance over reason is choosing alignment over fear. It is choosing the wisdom of the field over the noise of conditioning. It is choosing to trust that the expansion in your chest knows something your mind has not yet learned. And that, right there, is how a new timeline begins. Not with certainty, not with guarantees, but with a sensation, an inner movement that whispers, "This is the direction of your becoming." When you honor that whisper, life responds with a clarity you could not have accessed otherwise. Doors open not because you forced them, but because your vibration aligned with the frequency of opportunity. People appear not because you searched for them, but because your heart called them in. Synchronicities multiply, not because the universe suddenly started helping you, but because you finally stepped into the stream where guidance is always flowing. The emotional compass is not mystical, it is profoundly human. It is your nervous system, your intuition, your consciousness, your entire field of being cooperating to guide you toward the experiences that match your truth. And when you learn to trust it, even imperfectly, you begin to live in a way that feels less like striving and more like unfolding, less like controlling and more like allowing, less like effort and more like coherence. And perhaps the most liberating part of this realization is knowing that you don't need to be unshakable. You don't need to be perfectly healed. You don't need to maintain constant expansion. You only need to be honest. Honest enough to feel what you feel. Honest enough to listen to your contraction without shaming yourself. Honest enough to follow your expansion without demanding certainty. Honesty is what activates the compass. Awareness is what empowers it, and with each step guided not by fear or habit, but by the gentle intelligence of your emotional field, you move closer to yourself, your real self, the self that has been waiting patiently behind every contraction and rising quietly through every expansion. This is how the soul speaks. This is how you learn to listen, and this is how your life begins to align with who you truly are. 4. Adversity is the universe's refinement. There is a quiet truth that only reveals itself after life has carved its marks into you. After the storms have broken your certainties and the nights have stretched long enough for you to wonder whether the dawn will return at all. It is the truth that adversity was never sent to punish you. It was sent to shape you. Not in the dramatic sense of destiny or divine testing, but in the same natural, unforced way that a sculptor relies on the firmness of stone. Without resistance, nothing takes form. Without contrast, nothing gains clarity. And without moments of breaking, the deeper layers of your being would never be revealed. If you imagine the sculptor standing before a raw block of marble, you will see a parallel to your own life more clearly. The sculptor doesn't curse the stone for its hardness, nor does he wish it were softer so the work would be easier. He understands that the very resistance of the marble is what allows beauty to emerge. If the stone were fragile, it would crumble with each strike, and nothing meaningful could ever be shaped from it. In the same way, your soul needs the friction of contrast to see itself clearly. Adversity becomes the chisel that reveals the truth hidden beneath the layers you've accumulated from fear, conditioning, expectation, and habit. There is a subtle mercy in this process. The universe does not send challenges to break you. It sends them to break what was never truly you. Every time something in your life dissolves, whether it's a relationship, an identity, a dream you outgrew, or a belief that no longer serves you, the dissolution isn't an ending, it's a revealing, a clearing of the excess so the essential can be seen. The deeper truth is that adversity exposes your desires with precision. It uncovers what you long for by showing you what you can no longer tolerate. It sharpens your understanding of who you are becoming by contrasting it with the version of yourself that you have outgrown. Think back on the moments when you felt the deepest discomfort, the jobs that suffocated you, the relationships that drained you, the chapters that felt too tight for your spirit to fit inside. In those times, you may have blamed yourself for struggling, believing that discomfort was a sign of failure or insufficiency. But what if the discomfort was the signal that you were expanding? What if the pressure you felt was the early stage of a transformation already underway? Like the tension inside a seed before it breaks open. A seed experiences adversity the moment it begins to grow. The shell that once protected it becomes the shell that must crack. Without that rupture, nothing could sprout. Nothing could rise. And if you look closely at your own journey, you can see the same pattern repeating itself across years of lived experience. The moments that felt unbearable often led to the moments that felt undeniably right. The times you were pushed to your knees became the times you finally saw what mattered. The seasons that stripped you bare left just enough truth for you to grow again, not as you were, but as who you were meant to become. Adversity refines not by force, but by illumination. It shows you where you've been abandoning yourself. It reveals where you've been staying small, out of habit or fear. It highlights the parts of your life you've been settling for. Not because they nourished you, but because they felt familiar. When the universe wants you to rise, it often begins by making the places you've been hiding too uncomfortable to remain in. You might call that cruelty. But with time and perspective, you begin to recognize it as grace. The grace of being guided out of old forms that no longer fit your expanding consciousness. It takes a certain kind of inner maturity to look at adversity and see refinement instead of punishment. Yet, when you've lived enough life, when you've walked through the darkest corridors of your own mind, when you've sat with pain without running from it, when you've lost things you thought you couldn't live without and somehow found yourself still breathing on the other side, you begin to understand that adversity was never your enemy. It was your threshold. It was the doorway into a deeper version of yourself. The version that doesn't crumble at the first sign of difficulty. The version that knows how to bend without breaking. How to pause without collapsing. How to trust without demanding guarantees. There is a softness that comes from being refined in this way. It isn't fragility. It's wisdom. A quiet strength that doesn't need to be loud to be understood. You begin approaching challenges differently. Not with fear, but with curiosity. You learn to ask, what truth is this revealing? What part of me is being reshaped? What is life preparing me for? And as those questions settle into your being, adversity loses its weight. It no longer feels like an attack, but a recalibration. You don't brace yourself against it. You breathe through it. You don't collapse into it. You allow it to pass through you, trusting that what remains afterward will be truer than what was there before. You start to notice that every difficult period has left behind a gift, an insight, a capacity, a resilience you wouldn't have discovered without the friction. You see that the heaviness you carried once became the strength you walk with now. You recognize that the loneliness you once feared taught you how to hear your own voice. You realize that the endings you mourned became the beginnings you needed. This recognition is not dramatic. It's intimate. It's the kind of knowing that settles into your bones and whispers, nothing was wasted. And as you continue growing into this awareness, you begin meeting adversity the way a sculptor meets the stone, with respect. You no longer curse the resistance. You understand its purpose. You no longer fear the chisel. You recognize its shape. You no longer resist the breaking. You sense what it's making room for. Life becomes less about avoiding pain and more about listening to what pain reveals. Less about fearing challenges, and more about trusting the wisdom that flows through them. In this way, adversity becomes not something to survive, but something to learn from, a teacher whose lessons are carved not into your mind, but into your being. And with each lesson, your soul grows clearer. Your path grows straighter. Your truth grows louder. You begin to feel, in the deepest part of yourself, that every moment of breaking was also a moment of becoming. This is the refinement of the universe. This is how the soul is shaped. This is how you discover who you truly are, not despite the adversities you've lived through, but because of them. 5. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. There is a quiet moment on the journey of awakening when you finally begin to understand why your life has unfolded the way it has, not as a series of random blessings or misfortunes, but as a reflection of the energetic signature you've been carrying beneath every word, every choice, every breath. It takes time, and often a fair amount of heartbreak. Before this truth settles into your bones with clarity, the universe is not responding to your wishes, your dreams, your prayers, or even your most desperate desires. It is responding to your state of being. And in the quantum field, that state of being is not metaphorical. It is vibrational, measurable, real, in the most fundamental sense of reality. Everything in the universe, from a star burning in a distant galaxy to a single thought arising in your mind, moves according to frequency. This is not spiritual poetry. It is physics. When two vibrations meet, they resonate if they match. When they do not, they repel or pass by each other unnoticed. And your life, every person you meet, every opportunity you encounter, every pattern that repeats itself is shaped by the frequencies you emit through your emotions, beliefs, and self-perception. This truth can feel confronting at first, especially when you think about the things you've wanted so deeply. You may wonder why desire wasn't enough, why effort wasn't enough, why imagining the outcome wasn't enough. And yet, if you're honest with yourself, you'll see that wanting something often came with a vibration of lack. Effort often carried a vibration of strain, and imagining the outcome sometimes held more fear of what if it never happens than genuine belief in its inevitability. The field does not respond to the surface. It responds to the undercurrent. You might say all the right words, visualize all the right images, and still meet the same closed doors if your inner frequency is broadcasting doubt, unworthiness, or separation. Likewise, You may barely speak your desires aloud and still watch them unfold effortlessly if your inner state is aligned with the reality you seek. Alignment isn't a technique, it is a transformation. And transformation does not come from wanting, it comes from becoming. To become, you must first acknowledge the truth of what you currently are. Not the identity you show to others, but the vibration you carry when you're alone, when your guard is down, when the world becomes quiet enough for you to feel your own resonance. That resonance is what the quantum field listens to, and it responds with unfailing precision. Think of it like tuning a guitar. You can pluck a string with all the force you want, but if the string is out of tune, the sound will not harmonize with the music around it. The universe works the same way. It does not match intensity. It matches frequency. And frequency is shaped not by force, but by coherence, by the alignment of your inner world with the reality you wish to experience. You have likely experienced this without realizing it. Think of moments when something you had chased for years finally arrived at the exact moment you stopped forcing it, or times when the right people appeared just as you began treating yourself with more dignity, or the way opportunities flowed more easily when you were grounded, peaceful, and quietly confident, not necessarily ecstatic, but clear. These weren't coincidences. They were calibrations. The field was matching your new vibration. Life is not listening to your fear or your hope. Life is listening to your truth, and truth is always vibrational. This is why you cannot deceive the universe. You cannot pretend to feel abundant while secretly believing you are lacking. You cannot affirm love while carrying an inner narrative of unworthiness. You cannot demand joy while cultivating resentment. The field does not respond to the facade. It responds to the frequency beneath the facade. It feels what you feel, not what you say. And yet this truth is far more liberating than it is confronting, because it means you never have to chase anything again. You do not need to manipulate circumstances, impress anyone, or negotiate with life. You only need to align your frequency with your deepest truth, because what matches that truth cannot help but find you. Just as surely as a tuning fork vibrating at A will make another A resonate across the room. The question, then, is not how do I get what I want, but who am I becoming vibrationally? When you shift that inner state, the world around you shifts in ways that almost seem orchestrated. People behave differently around you. Opportunities rearrange themselves. Synchronicities appear like stepping stones across a river you once believed was impassable. Not because the external world has changed, but because you have. Consider the way you feel when you truly honor yourself. There is a steadiness in your chest, a spaciousness in your breath, a groundedness in your presence. That state draws experiences that match its coherence. Or think of the way your energy shifts when you fall into self-doubt or scarcity. Your body tightens. Your field contracts. Your vision narrows. The world mirrors that contraction. Not to punish you, but to reveal the vibration you are sending out. This is not cruelty. It is consistency. Life is always showing you who you are in the frequency domain. When people leave, when an opportunity collapses, when a path dissolves in front of you, the universe is not rejecting you. It is reflecting the parts of your vibration that are ready to evolve, the parts that can no longer sustain the reality you once tolerated. Your soul does not care about what you want temporarily. It cares about what you are ready to embody. And embodiment requires honesty, deep, patient, compassionate honesty. You cannot become what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot align with a higher vibration while holding on to beliefs that contradict it. You cannot attract the reality you dream of while carrying a frequency built from the wounds of a past version of yourself. Transformation happens slowly, quietly, in the moments when you choose tenderness over self-judgment, presence over panic, coherence over chaos. Each small shift raises your frequency. Each honest breath recalibrates your field. And the more you align with the vibration of who you truly are, the more your life becomes a mirror of that essence. This is the heart of quantum creation. You attract not what you desire, but what you embody. You receive not what you chase, but what you harmonize with. You experience not what you demand, but what you vibrate. And the most beautiful part is this: you don't need to force anything. You don't need to rush. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to become more coherent, more honest, more aligned with the truth of your being. As you do, the field, the universe, life, reality itself will move toward you with a clarity and precision that feels almost like destiny. But it isn't destiny, it's resonance. And resonance will always find its way home. 6. Awareness is the ultimate law. There is a moment on the inner path when you begin to understand that reality does not bend itself according to your wishes, your fears, or even your prayers, but according to the quiet and often unnoticed convictions you hold beneath the surface. These convictions, these subtle recognitions of what you believe to be real, form the architecture of your world long before any event unfolds. And when you've lived long enough, walked through enough cycles of longing and disappointment, surrender and renewal, you begin to sense a truth that is both humbling and liberating. You do not experience what you want, you experience what you know. Awareness is not passive. Awareness is creative. It does not merely observe reality, it generates the framework through which reality arrives. This is why two people can stand in the same moment, facing the same circumstances, and live entirely different experiences. It isn't the circumstance that shapes their world, but the consciousness through which they perceive it. The outer world is not separate from you. It is an extension of your awareness, echoing back the truths you hold, whether they were chosen consciously or inherited silently from years of survival. When you truly recognize something as real, not logically, not intellectually, but vibrationally, it must manifest in your life. It is not optional, not negotiable, not dependent on timing or luck. Recognition is the command. Awareness is the causation. What you deeply accept as true becomes the blueprint. The quantum field follows with exact precision. But awareness isn't formed through effort. It forms through identity, through the state of being you return to when no one is watching, when the mind stops performing, when the body quiets and reveals what you truly believe about yourself and your place in the world. And whether those beliefs empower or limit you, the universe responds to them faithfully, without judgment. You may say, "I am worthy," yet carry an inner awareness of unworthiness born from years of not being seen. You may declare, "I am safe," while your body remembers every moment it was anything but. You may affirm abundance, yet perceive the world through a filter of lack. And even without speaking a word, the field listens to the truth beneath the performance. Awareness is the law because awareness is the lens through which the field interprets your frequency. There is a difference between wanting and knowing. Wanting comes from a place of distance, a sense of separation from the thing you desire. Knowing arises from unity, from the inner acceptance that what you seek exists not outside you but within your consciousness already. This distinction is not semantic, it is vibrational. Wanting whispers, "It is not here yet." Knowing breathes, "It is already part of me." And the universe responds to the breath, not the whisper. Think of awareness like the soil in which manifestation grows. The seed is your intention, the moisture you're feeling, the sunlight, your openness. But unless the soil accepts the seed, unless the ground welcomes it as something that can and will grow, the seed cannot root. You can water it with affirmations, expose it to visualization, place it under the warm light of desire. But if the soil rejects it, nothing blooms. This is why so many people feel exhausted on the spiritual path. They try to force a new reality while still perceiving themselves through the lens of the old one. They want to experience love but remain aware of themselves as unlovable. They want abundance but remain aware of themselves as lacking. They want peace while holding an awareness rooted in fear. The outer world simply reflects the inner dissonance, not as punishment, but as guidance, not as failure, but as clarity. The universe is forever saying, "Look here, this is what you truly believe." And until you shift this recognition, I cannot deliver a different reflection. Awareness, when understood deeply, becomes the doorway to freedom. You stop asking why something hasn't shown up in your life and start asking, what truth am I still identifying with? You stop fighting circumstances and start exploring the awareness that summoned them. You stop feeling betrayed by life and start participating in your own creation with honesty rather than denial. There is something profoundly softening about this shift. When you stop clinging to external change and start tending the quiet garden of your internal awareness, life begins rearranging itself with a natural ease, not because you've forced anything, but because your inner recognition has become coherent. Coherence is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. When your awareness is clear, your emotions align. When your emotions align, your vibration stabilizes. And when your vibration stabilizes, the outer world follows like a shadow following a source of light. Awareness does not require control. It requires presence. It requires willingness to see what is truly living in you, not what you hope is there, not what you pretend is there, not what you think should be there, but what is genuinely there in the depths of your being. And this kind of honesty is not hard. It is simply rare. It asks you to meet yourself without judgment, to hold the parts of you that feel small or afraid, and to gently shift them not through force, but through understanding. As your awareness shifts, your reality shifts. It cannot do otherwise. A person who becomes aware of themselves as whole does not attract relationships built on emptiness. A person who becomes aware of themselves as abundant does not live in scarcity. A person who becomes aware of themselves as capable does not remain stuck. Awareness doesn't improve your life. It transforms the foundation upon which your life is built. And this transformation does not require dramatic effort. It happens moment by moment, breath by breath, in the quiet spaces where you decide to see yourself differently. When you choose to recognize your worth even when fear arises, your awareness shifts. When you choose to trust the intelligence of life even when outcomes are uncertain, your awareness shifts. When you choose to treat yourself with compassion instead of criticism, your awareness shifts. These small shifts accumulate like ripples, and eventually they reshape the entire ocean of your being. And when the ocean changes, the waves must follow. The universe, attentive and responsive, listens to the frequency of your awareness as if it were law, because in the quantum field, it is. What you deeply accept becomes the architecture of your timeline. What you energetically embody becomes the landscape of your life. There is a stillness that arises when this truth becomes real to you. You no longer chase outcomes. You no longer fear delays. You no longer beg the universe for signs of progress. Instead, you look inward and ask, what am I recognizing as true in this moment? Because that recognition is the seed of your next experience. Awareness is the ultimate law, because awareness is creation. And when you learn to shape the inner landscape with clarity, gentleness, and honesty, the outer world begins to mirror the truth you finally allowed yourself to know. 7. Imagination is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. There is a quiet miracle woven into the structure of your consciousness, a faculty so ordinary that most people overlook its power, yet so fundamental that nothing in your life can come into form without passing through it. That faculty is imagination, not the childish daydreaming you were told to abandon as you grew older, but the profoundly creative dimension of awareness where the invisible first takes shape. If you look deeply, with the honesty that comes only after living through your own seasons of breaking and becoming, you will find that everything real in your life was once a silent image held inside you. Every new direction, every transformation, every chapter of renewal began as a feeling, a picture, a moment of inner resonance that preceded the outer expression. Imagination is not fantasy. Imagination is architecture. It is the drafting room of your consciousness, where the blueprint of your future self begins to crystallize long before the physical world has any evidence to offer you. And the blueprint that imagination crafts is not made of ink or thought, it is made of emotion. This is the part the world often misunderstands. A visual image alone carries no creative force unless it is infused with a feeling. The same way a sketch becomes meaningful only when animated by intention. The universe does not respond to empty imagery. It responds to the vibration embedded within it. An imagined scene without emotion is like a seed with no moisture, full of potential, yet unable to grow. So when you imagine, the question is never merely, what do I see? The real question is, what do I feel as I see it? Because that feeling, the subtle expansion in your chest, the sense of relief, the quiet knowing that washes over you, that is the energetic DNA that instructs reality. You are not sending a request to the universe. You are imprinting a frequency within your own field. And as that frequency stabilizes, the outer world begins reorganizing itself around it. This is why imagination is not escapism. It is participation. It is communion with the deeper layer of creation that exists beneath the visible world. If you have ever closed your eyes in a moment of heartbreak and pictured a life where your heart was whole again, you were not pretending. You were reaching into a dimension that has always existed, a dimension where your healing was already complete, waiting for you to align with it. If you have ever imagined a future where you felt more grounded, more connected, more fulfilled, you were not indulging in fantasy. You were touching a timeline that your current self had not yet grown into. Imagination is not the avoidance of reality. It is the preview of what becomes possible when your inner vibration changes. There is a tenderness in realizing this. You begin to understand that your imagination has been guiding you since you were a child. That quiet nudge towards something more meaningful. That sense of belonging somewhere you had not yet reached. The images that returned again and again like forgotten memories, they were not random. They were echoes from deeper layers of your consciousness, calling you toward alignment. And when you've lived long enough, you begin to sense that those inner visions were often more trustworthy than the advice of those who tried to shape your life according to their fears. Imagination becomes powerful not when it is loud, but when it is honest, not when it is extravagant, but when it is aligned. The simplest vision, a room filled with warmth, a conversation that feels safe, a morning where you wake with a sense of purpose, can hold more creative potential than the grandest fantasies if it carries emotional truth. The universe responds to sincerity, not spectacle. This is why imagination can never be forced. When you try to imagine from a place of fear, the picture becomes strained. When you try to imagine from a place of emptiness, the scene collapses under its own weight. But when you imagine from a place of inner coherence, even if the vision is small, it becomes luminous, it becomes magnetic, it becomes alive. The emotional resonance within it begins drawing circumstances that match its frequency. The way two tuning forks vibrate together across a room. You may have felt this before in moments that seemed almost magical. You imagined reconnecting with someone, and then they called unexpectedly. You imagined a new path for yourself, and an opportunity appeared without you seeking it. You imagined healing, and your body began responding before you understood why. These moments were not miracles in the mystical sense. They were natural consequences of your vibrational blueprint aligning with expression. Imagination becomes the bridge because it speaks the language of both worlds. It speaks the language of the unseen through emotion and the language of the physical through form. When you summon an image and breathe feeling into it, you create an energetic mold. The quantum field interprets that mold not as a suggestion, but as instruction. And because the field responds to coherence, not effort, your inner vision begins to attract matching experiences in ways that defy linear logic. But imagination is not merely a tool for manifestation. It is also a mirror of your inner state. What you find yourself able to imagine says far more about your self-perception than your desires. When you cannot imagine being loved, it is not because love is unavailable. It is because your awareness is still healing. When you cannot imagine thriving, it is not because thriving is unlikely. It is because your inner world has been shaped by survival. Imagination reveals where your inner work lives. It shows you the borders of your current identity and invites you to expand beyond them. This is why emotional truth is everything. Imagination without feeling is hollow. Feeling without imagination is directionless. But when feeling and imagination merge, they become the birthplace of new realities. Sometimes the inner image will feel fragile at first, like a candle threatened by the slightest breath. But you don't strengthen a flame by shielding it with force. You strengthen it by allowing it to burn long enough to find its own steadiness. In the same way, your imagined vision becomes more stable as you revisit it, not with desperation, but with gentle familiarity. Each time you return to it, the emotional resonance deepens. Each time you allow yourself to feel it more fully, the blueprint grows more intricate, more coherent, more capable of reaching physical expression, and eventually, there will be a moment quiet, unassuming when the vision no longer feels like imagination. It feels like recognition, as if you are remembering something rather than inventing it. That is the moment the blueprint is complete. That is the moment your inner and outer worlds have synchronized. That is the moment the seen and unseen become one. Imagination is the bridge. Emotion is the blueprint. Awareness is the architect. And together, they shape the life you are awakening into, not through force, not through control, but through the gentle unfolding of what has always been waiting for you on the other side of your becoming. 8. Gratitude only matters when it is genuine. There is a tenderness to gratitude that often gets lost in the noise of self-improvement. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that gratitude is a task to complete, a practice to perfect, a spiritual obligation to perform in order to receive more from life. We were told to list things we are grateful for, even on days when our hearts felt hollow, to smile through the ache, to insist on gratitude when what we truly felt was exhaustion, confusion, or quiet sorrow. And without realizing it, we turned gratitude into another mask, another performance, layered on top of an inner state that did not match the words we were speaking. But the universe doesn't respond to the list you write in your notebook. It responds to the vibration you hold in your chest. When gratitude is forced, it tightens the body. It creates pressure, the kind that whispers, "You should feel differently than you do. You should be stronger. You should be more positive." And that whisper, small as it is, creates contraction. Contraction closes the heart. Contraction closes the field. Contraction blocks the very abundance gratitude is meant to invite in. Not because life is punishing you, but because forced gratitude is not gratitude at all. It is fear dressed as virtue. To be clear, there is nothing wrong with wanting to feel grateful. There is nothing wrong with trying to reach for the light when life feels heavy. But genuine gratitude never begins with force. It begins with honesty. You cannot leap from despair into gratitude by sheer will. You cannot skip over your pain and call it appreciation. Real gratitude is not a performance. It is an opening. And openings do not happen when the heart is pressured. They happen when the heart is met. Think of a flower. You cannot pry its petals open to make it bloom faster. It blooms when it is ready. When the conditions support it: warmth, nourishment, safety, time. Gratitude is the same. It opens naturally when the inner environment is gentle enough for it to grow. It rises when you feel spacious, when the nervous system relaxes, when the weight inside softens enough for light to enter. And that means the first step toward true gratitude is not pretending you feel grateful. The first step is allowing yourself to feel what is actually there. You may think that acknowledging your disappointment or fear will pull you further away from gratitude, but the opposite is true. Honesty creates expansion. Suppression creates contraction. And gratitude only lives in expansion. It cannot breathe in the tightness of self-criticism or spiritual pressure. Gratitude begins to awaken the moment you stop forcing it. There is a deeper intelligence inside you that knows when gratitude is authentic. You feel it as a warmth spreading through your chest. Not necessarily dramatic, but unmistakably real. It may arise when you notice the gentleness of morning light, or the comfort of a familiar voice, or the resilience you showed on a day you thought you would break. Sometimes it emerges after tears, when something inside finally exhales, and sometimes it comes quietly, in the smallest possible way, showing you that despite everything, there is still something within you capable of softening. That softness is gratitude beginning to bloom. Gratitude does not require you to ignore your pain. It does not ask you to erase your past, deny your emotions, or pretend your burdens are lighter than they are. Authentic gratitude is not an erasure of your shadow. It is the gentle glow that appears after you have allowed yourself to inhabit the shadow without shame. Many people misunderstand this and attempt to use gratitude as a spiritual shortcut and escape from discomfort. But gratitude is not an escape. It is a transformation. It is the natural byproduct of allowing yourself to be fully human. And being fully human means honoring the entire spectrum of your emotional experience, not just the polished parts. Life does not ask you to feel grateful every moment. It asks you to remain open enough to notice when gratitude arises, and to trust that those moments, however small, are signs that your field is healing. When gratitude is genuine, something remarkable happens. The heart expands without effort. You feel a subtle shift in your breathing. As if the universe is exhaling through you, you sense a clarity that does not depend on external conditions. You become present, not because you forced yourself to be, but because gratitude brings you back to presence naturally. And in that presence, abundance begins to flow not as a reward, but as resonance. Genuine gratitude carries a frequency that aligns with expansion, and expansion attracts more experiences that match it, not because you manifested them by trying hard, but because the universe responds to openness the way water responds to low ground. It flows where there is space. When your gratitude is real, you become spacious. You no longer cling to outcomes with desperation. You no longer chase validation. You no longer contract around the fear that life will slip out of your hands. Instead, you begin to trust the quiet intelligence moving through your existence. You start noticing small blessings that were always there but previously overlooked. You feel supported not because circumstances have changed, but because your awareness has softened enough to recognize support. And as this recognition deepens, gratitude becomes less of a practice and more of a presence. You stop writing lists to convince yourself, and instead, gratitude becomes a subtle companion, a way of seeing, a way of listening, a way of being with life. True gratitude does not demand. True gratitude does not pretend. True gratitude does not perform. It feels like an inner widening, a gentle allowing, a silent yes whispered from the soul. And that is what calls abundance toward you, not the words, not the ritual, but the openness. Abundance is not attracted to perfection. It is attracted to truth. It moves toward the heart that is honest, the heart that is willing to heal, the heart that can feel even the smallest flicker of appreciation without forcing itself into a smile it does not yet feel. So, if you find yourself unable to feel grateful today, let that be okay. Let that be true. Let that be enough. Your honesty is more powerful than your performance. And in that honesty, in that gentle permission to be exactly where you are, the first seeds of genuine gratitude begin to take root. And when they do, abundance will not need to be summoned. It will arrive naturally, drawn by the quiet expansion of a heart that is finally ready to receive. 9. Surrender is what opens the door. There is a moment on the inner path when you become tired, not tired in the ordinary sense, but tired in the soul. Tired of gripping life so tightly that your very breath begins to tremble under the weight of your own expectations. You reach a point where the strategies, the plans, the relentless attempts to shape every outcome no longer bring comfort. Instead, they bring exhaustion, a kind of quiet despair that whispers, "There must be another way to live." And when you finally pause long enough to hear that whisper, you begin to touch the deeper wisdom that has been waiting for you all along. Life does not respond to force, it responds to resonance. There is a profound difference between control and alignment. Control is the attempt to bend reality through effort. Alignment is the willingness to let reality arrange itself around your true vibration. And the moment you loosen your grip, truly loosen it. Not from resignation, but from trust. Something in your field softens. The tension begins to dissolve. The noise inside your mind quiets. And into that quiet, life begins to move in ways it could not move before. This softening, this unclenching, is what many call surrender. Yet surrender is one of the most misunderstood states on the spiritual path. People imagine surrender to mean giving up, doing nothing, collapsing into passivity. But true surrender is not the absence of action. It is the absence of resistance. It is the moment when you stop wrestling with the current and allow yourself to float. Not because you have lost hope, but because you have finally learned to trust the intelligence that carries you. When you have lived through enough seasons of effort, when you have tried to force love, force timing, force success, force clarity, you eventually learn that anything you grasp too tightly slips through your fingers. The universe does not yield to pressure. It yields to presence. And presence cannot arise when your nervous system is in a constant state of gripping, bracing, anticipating, or defending. Surrender is the return to presence. When you stop trying to push reality into shape, you make space for reality to reveal the shape it was already becoming. This is why so many breakthroughs come in moments when you finally step back. Ideas land when the mind is relaxed. Opportunities appear when you stop chasing them. People show up at the exact moment you stop trying to control the narrative. The field around you is always listening, always responding, always rearranging itself to match the vibration you are emitting. But control distorts that vibration. Control tightens your field. Control sends out the signal of fear, even when your words sound hopeful. When you soften, however, when you breathe deeper, when you release the demand for outcomes, when you trust that life is aware of you, your vibration rises naturally. Not through affirmation, but through relief. And relief is one of the most magnetic vibrations in the universe. Your field begins to expand the moment your body releases the tension it has been holding. And when your field expands, reality begins rearranging itself around this new openness. This is not mystical. It is physics. A coherent field draws coherent experiences. A relaxed mind perceives opportunities that a fearful mind overlooks. A trusting heart invites timelines that a contracted heart cannot access. Surrender is not the absence of desire. It is the recognition that desire is fulfilled, not through force, but through alignment. When you stop pushing, you stop blocking. When you stop controlling, you stop resisting. When you stop demanding that life unfold on your schedule, life begins unfolding on a schedule far more intelligent than your own. This is the paradox. The moment you stop insisting, reality begins assisting. There is a memory that lives in your bones, moments when life surprised you with its timing, when something arrived effortlessly right after you decided to stop fighting for it. Times when you released an old identity, and new paths appeared without you chasing them. Times when you let go of someone, and the space created allowed you to meet yourself more honestly. These moments were not coincidences. They were reflections of the shift in your vibration when you surrendered. The universe does not punish your effort, but it cannot move freely while you are trying to control every detail. Control is like a clenched fist it cannot receive. Surrender is an open palm. And the open palm is where abundance, clarity, love, and possibility land naturally. There is something deeply healing about realizing you no longer have to force your way through life. You no longer have to treat every moment as a problem to solve or a threat to avoid. You no longer have to arrange the world with your bare hands. When you soften, life softens with you. When you trust, life responds with precision. When you release, life reveals. And in this gentle unfolding, you begin to see that surrender is not a spiritual technique. It is a remembering that you were never meant to carry the world on your shoulders. A remembering that the intelligence that grows a forest, that moves the tides, that spins galaxies into form is the same intelligence that flows through your breath. A remembering that life is not indifferent to you. It is in conversation with you, but only when you stop speaking over it. Surrender opens the conversation. It whispers, I am here. I am listening. I am willing to be led by something wiser than my fear. And the universe answers instantly, not always with what you expect, but always with what reflects your new vibration. When you stop clinging, you create space. When you create space, resonance takes over. And resonance is the most effortless force in existence. So surrender, not by collapsing, but by relaxing, not by giving up, but by opening up, not by abandoning your desires, but by aligning with them in a way that doesn't choke the life out of them. The softening you allow within yourself becomes the opening through which your next reality enters. And once you feel that truth not as an idea, but as a lived experience, you will realize that surrender was never the loss of control. It was the return to harmony. It was the return to trust. It was the return to the intelligence that has been holding you long before you knew how to hold yourself. And in that return, life finally has the space it needs to move toward you with the grace it has been waiting to offer. 10. Money is a flow of energy. There comes a time in every honest spiritual journey when you begin to see that money was never the enemy, never the prize, never the burden. It was only ever a mirror reflecting your relationship with trust, with worthiness, with your own sense of safety in the world. When you look deeply, without the old narratives of guilt or pride, you begin to sense that money is nothing more than movement, a current, a flow, a form of energy responding, like everything else, to the vibration you hold within your being. Money is not loyal to effort. Money is not loyal to intelligence. Money is not loyal to ambition. It is loyal to frequency. You can toil endlessly, pushing your body to exhaustion, and money will still avoid you if your vibration is steeped in fear. You can be clever, resourceful, full of ideas, and still struggle if your inner state whispers, there is never enough. Because money does not respond to the surface. It is drawn to coherence, to openness, to trust. It moves effortlessly toward those whose energy signals, I am safe, I am supported, I am worthy of flow. And it pulls away from any vibration that contracts in fear. This is not a moral judgment. It is simply resonance. Fear creates tightness in the body. Tightness creates scarcity in the mind. Scarcity creates resistance in the field. And resistance disrupts the flow that was meant to move through you. Money has always been movement. Consider how it behaves in the world it circulates. It exchanges hands. It fuels. It expands. It supports. It does not stagnate. Stagnation suffocates it. The same is true within you. When fear makes you cling, hoard, or shrink, you are signaling to the universe that you do not believe in the replenishing nature of life, and life responds accordingly, not as punishment, but as reflection. When trust enters your field, even in quiet, imperfect ways, your relationship with money begins to transform. Not because money suddenly becomes easier to earn, but because you stop blocking what was already trying to find you. Trust loosens the grip of survival mode. It opens the chest. It calms the nervous system, and a calm nervous system is a powerful magnet. Money moves toward certainty, not external certainty, but internal coherence. It moves toward gratitude, not gratitude, recited under pressure, but genuine appreciation for what is already present. When gratitude is real, your field expands in a way that signals, I can hold more. I am not afraid of receiving. And the universe responds to that expansion the way water responds to open space. It flows there naturally. You may have noticed how money behaves around certain people. Some attract opportunities effortlessly, while others seem to repel them despite working twice as hard. Look closely, and you will see that what separates them is not luck, intelligence, or privilege, but frequency. Those who attract abundance carry an inner state that says, there is enough. That state is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is a nervous system that is not braced for loss, a mind that is not anchored in fear, a heart that is open rather than contracted. And this is the subtle truth many people overlook. Money does not create safety. Safety creates the space for money to flow. When you cultivate a sense of inner safety through breath, through presence, through self-worth, your energy stops broadcasting desperation. And the moment desperation leaves your vibration, abundance begins to enter. Not all at once, not always dramatically, but consistently. Flow emerges where fear once constricted. Money is not emotional, but it responds to your emotions. If fear dominates your field, money experiences you as a closed circuit. If gratitude and trust dominate your field even quietly, money experiences you as open, receptive, willing, and because money is an amplifier, it expands whatever state you are already in. If you are fearful, it will amplify scarcity. If you are grounded, it will amplify stability. If you are generous, it will amplify abundance. This is why people who feel abundant often receive more, and those who feel scarce often lose more. They are broadcasting two different realities into the quantum field. But the path to shifting your money vibration is not about pretending you are wealthy. It is about softening the fear that convinces you you're alone. Money responds far more to relief than to force. When you release the belief that you must prove your worth through struggle, money begins to approach you in ways that feel almost effortless. You stop chasing it. You start aligning with it. Alignment with money feels like ease, not laziness, but coherence. It feels like taking action from a grounded place rather than panic. It feels like making decisions based on expansion rather than contraction. It feels like allowing yourself to desire more without shaming yourself for wanting. Desire is not greed. Desire is the soul stretching into a new version of itself. Money, at its essence, is a companion to that expansion. It supports growth, creation, movement, contribution. It is not the source of your power but the extension of it. And when you recognize that money is simply energy neutral, flowing, responding, you stop fearing it. You stop worshiping it. You begin relating to it the way you relate to breath, essential, natural, always moving in and out. Money flows to trust, because trust is the frequency of abundance. Money flows to gratitude because gratitude is the frequency of receptivity. Money flows to openness because openness is the frequency of possibility. And all three, the trust, the gratitude, the openness, are born not from pretending everything is okay, but from steadily remembering that you are supported by something larger than circumstance. When you shift your internal environment, money does not become the source of your security. It becomes the expression of it. It becomes proof that your vibration has softened, proof that your field has expanded, proof that life is responding to the new truth you are living. And when you feel that shift not in your bank account, but in your chest, you will understand why money is just energy. It moves toward the places where fear has loosened its grip. It moves toward the hearts that are willing to receive without shame. It moves toward the souls that are ready to create, to grow, to contribute from a place of enoughness rather than lack. Money is not the reward. It is the reflection. And when you learn to create from resonance rather than fear, the flow you once chased will begin to find its way quietly, steadily, naturally back to you. 211. You are the one who sets the master frequency. There comes a point often after you have broken open enough times, after life has humbled you into a softer kind of truth, when you begin to understand something quietly revolutionary. Every relationship in your life is responding to the tone you hold within yourself, not to your words, not to your expectations, not to the roles you play, but to the frequency you embody when no one is watching. That inner frequency becomes the master signal, the underlying melody, the field of resonance that every other connection, romantic, familial, professional, or spiritual, instinctively harmonizes with or pulls away from. Most people spend their lives trying to tune the world around them. They try to fix others, influence outcomes, negotiate for love, earn approval, maintain peace through self-abandonment, or chase connection through effort. But no matter how hard you try to shape the outer world, nothing quite aligns until the inner world shifts. Because you are not reacting to relationships, you are orchestrating them. Your relationship with yourself is the original symphony, and everyone else hears the music even when you pretend it's silent. If the music inside you is filled with self-doubt, you will attract people who amplify that insecurity. If the music inside you is harsh or self-critical, you will draw relationships that mirror that tone back to you, not as cruelty, but as reflection. If the music inside you is gentle, grounded, and honest, you will find that others begin responding to you with a softness they didn't show before. not because they changed, but because your frequency pulled a different version of them into expression. You become the tuning fork, and every relationship becomes an echo. This is why inner work is never selfish. Healing is not a luxury. It is the most deep-rooted form of responsibility, because the moment your relationship with yourself begins to shift, the entire ecosystem of your connections reorganizes around that shift. People who once drained you fall away with quiet inevitability. People who resonate with your new self begin appearing without effort. Old dynamics that once felt unchangeable dissolve as you dismantle the beliefs that held them in place. Your frequency is the architect. Your relationships are the architecture. And the blueprint is always being drawn from within. When you've lived long enough, when you've been wounded, healed, wounded again, and finally started to see the patterns, you begin to notice how consistent this truth has always been. You can track your past relationships and see how each one revealed something about your relationship with yourself at the time. When you felt unworthy, you accepted breadcrumbs. When you feared abandonment, you held on to what hurt you. When you distrusted your own voice, you gravitated toward people who spoke louder. And when you began to grow, you noticed how some connections faded. Not because anyone was wrong, but because the music no longer matched. Nothing personal, just resonance. The beauty of this truth is that your power doesn't lie in managing others, it lies in tuning yourself. When you treat yourself with respect, disrespect from others becomes jarring rather than familiar. When you speak to yourself with kindness, unkindness from others loses its influence. When you honor your needs, relationships built on self-sacrifice cannot survive. Your frequency rises, and anything that cannot rise with it naturally falls away. This falling away is not loss. It is alignment. It is the universe removing what cannot harmonize with your becoming. There is a quiet dignity that emerges when you finally realize you set the tone. You no longer cling to relationships out of fear. You no longer chase validation because your inner alignment becomes its own source of nourishment. You no longer tolerate chaos because the stillness you've cultivated within yourself becomes too precious to trade. You begin choosing relationships not from desperation, but from coherence. And coherence changes everything. Coherent people communicate differently. They love differently. They listen differently. They forgive differently. They hold boundaries differently. They show up differently. When you become coherent within yourself, you can feel the difference instantly. Your presence becomes steadier. Your boundaries become clearer, not sharp, but grounded. Your words become less performative and more authentic. You stop trying to impress. You stop pretending. You stop bending yourself into shapes that betray your own truth. And people around you feel this shift. They sense the stability, the calm, the clarity. They begin adjusting their own behavior around your energy. Not because you demanded it, but because your field naturally invites a different response. This is the subtle power of setting the master frequency. You do not need to force harmony. You become harmony, and harmony attracts its own kind. People often misunderstand this, believing they must first change others before they can change their lives. But life does not work from the outside in. It works from the inside out. When you shift the template you hold within yourself, your self-worth, your boundaries, your self-talk, your expectations, your emotional tone, you shift your relational world with astonishing precision, even more beautifully. The universe uses your relationships to show you where your frequency is still unhealed. If someone consistently triggers your insecurity, it is not because they have power over you. It is because they are highlighting a section of your symphony that is out of tune. If someone consistently drains you, they are showing where your boundaries are porous. If someone consistently confuses you, they are showing where your inner clarity is still forming. Nothing is random. Everyone is an echo. But when you begin to tend your inner music, the world stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror, one that finally reflects something worth recognizing. You no longer fear losing people because you understand that what is meant for you resonates with you. You no longer cling to connections that feel misaligned because you trust the natural intelligence of the field to bring in those who meet you in truth. And the truest relationships, the ones that feel like nourishment rather than chaos, unfold naturally when your frequency becomes consistent. You do not have to perform for them. You do not have to shrink for them. You do not have to chase them. They simply harmonize with what you already are. You become the conductor of your own life, not through control, but through coherence. And the moment you understand this not as an idea, but as a lived experience, you will realize that every relationship in your life is a reflection of the one relationship you cannot escape, the one you have with yourself. When you change that relationship, you change the entire symphony, not through force, not through effort, but through the quiet, steady tuning of your own inner frequency, a frequency the universe cannot help but listen to. 12. Timing is always perfect. There comes a certain season in your inner journey, a season often reached only after years of pushing, striving, forcing, and feeling defeated, when you begin to sense a truth so simple and yet so liberating that it changes the way you breathe inside your own life. It is the recognition that there is no such thing as late. Nothing you were meant to experience has slipped through your fingers. Nothing meant for you has sailed past you. Nothing you deeply resonate with has been denied to you out of cosmic oversight or personal failure. Life does not obey the ticking of the mind. Life obeys the ripening of the soul. This ripening, this inner readiness, is the true clock governing all manifestation. And when you look back across the terrain of your journey, you begin to see this with a clarity that feels almost painful. The things you once begged for in desperation would have overwhelmed the earlier version of you. The doors that remained closed were not rejections. They were protections. The delays you cursed were alignments in disguise. And the seasons that felt stagnant were not punishment. They were preparation. Life does not move according to effort. It moves according to frequency. And frequency ripens only through experience, through healing, through self-honesty, through those quiet internal shifts that happen when no one is watching, those moments when your nervous system softens, when your beliefs loosen, when your heart learns how to hold more than it held before. This is why the timing of life feels mysterious. It is not linear. It is vibrational, and vibrational timing cannot be rushed. You cannot force yourself into coherence. You cannot demand expansion before the old layers have fallen away. You cannot summon a miracle when your body is still braced for disappointment. In the same way, a fruit cannot ripen by force. Your manifestations cannot appear before your field is ready to sustain them. There is a softness in realizing this. You begin to understand that every single thing in your life, every person, every opportunity, every loss, every breakthrough has arrived at the exact moment when your frequency was ready for it. Not a moment earlier, not a moment later. The universe is never late. You are never behind. You are simply aligning. Timing is not chronological. It is relational. It is the relationship between your inner state and the reality you are capable of holding. Imagine someone handing you a precious object, a delicate glass sculpture, before you learned how to steady your hands. You would drop it, not because you don't deserve it, but because your body is not yet trained to hold it. Life operates with the same tenderness. It waits for you to become the version of yourself who can hold your blessings without fear, without sabotage, without collapse. And when you become that version, even quietly, even gradually, the timing shifts instantly. The opportunity arrives. The clarity arrives. The synchrony arrives. The person arrives. The next chapter arrives. Not because you finally tried hard enough, but because something in your field finally softened into alignment. There is a deep humility in realizing that no amount of rushing can make the seed sprout before it is ready. No amount of impatience can speed the blooming of a flower. No amount of desperation can accelerate your evolution. You grow when you grow. You heal when you heal. You ripen when you ripen. And life meets you exactly there. What you call delay is often the universe rearranging energies, shifting timelines, dissolving obstacles, preparing you vibrationally for a reality you cannot yet sustain. If it came too early, you would not recognize it. If it came too early, you might fear it. If it came too early, you might destroy it with the remnants of your old beliefs. Life waits for you, and in that waiting, you are being shaped. This shaping is rarely comfortable. It often feels like nothing is happening while everything is happening inside you. You may not notice the subtle rewiring in your being, the softening of old wounds, the dissolving of outdated narratives, the strengthening of your boundaries, the slow expansion of your capacity to receive. But reality notices. The field notices. The universe listens to the quiet hum of your becoming and adjusts itself accordingly. Not according to your impatience, but according to your readiness. And readiness is not a mental declaration. It is an energetic truth. You do not become ready by saying, "I'm ready now." You become ready when your frequency stops contradicting your desires. You become ready when your body no longer braces for the worst. You become ready when gratitude feels natural instead of forced. You become ready when your worthiness stops being a concept and becomes a lived experience. You become ready when the heart no longer collapses at the possibility of loss. Readiness is coherence. Coherence is ripeness. Ripeness is timing. Life does not give you what you ask for. Life gives you what you can stabilize. And stabilization takes time, not linear time, but inner time. The time required for the turbulence inside you to settle, for the beliefs you inherited to fall away, for your nervous system to trust again after years of contraction. This is the time that cannot be rushed, because it is the time that builds the foundation on which your next version of reality will rest. When you've lived through enough cycles of longing and becoming, you begin to trust this. You stop panicking during the empty seasons. You stop comparing your life to someone else's timeline. You stop believing that life has forgotten you just because the surface seems still. You begin to understand that stillness is not stagnation, it is incubation. The invisible is taking shape beneath the surface, and the lack of movement is often the clearest sign that something is preparing to emerge. And when it does emerge, it will feel effortless, not because it was easy, but because you have become aligned with it. The door you once pushed against will open without force. The opportunity you once chased will find you naturally. The breakthrough you once begged for will unfold quietly, without drama. This is the beauty of perfect timing. It arrives in silence. It arrives in coherence. It arrives in truth. And when it comes, you will know, not with excitement, but with recognition, because what is meant for you does not feel foreign. It feels familiar. It feels like a returning. It feels like a version of yourself you have been growing into for years. This is why nothing is ever late. Why nothing is ever wasted. Why nothing you were meant to experience could ever pass you by. In the quantum field, timing is not chronological. It is vibrational. You don't miss your moment. You meet it the moment your frequency becomes a match. 13. Inner preparation is what creates what people call luck. There is a moment in every sincere seeker's journey when you finally begin to see through one of the great illusions of this world, the illusion that luck is random, selective, granted only to a chosen few by some mysterious hand of fate. When you look closely, with the eyes of someone who has lived long enough to witness patterns that logic cannot fully explain, you begin to sense a truth far gentler, far more empowering, and far more intimate. Luck is not coincidence. Luck is coherence. Luck is readiness meeting resonance. People often describe others as lucky when they witness outcomes, but do not see the inner transformation that made those outcomes possible. They see the visible fruit but not the invisible soil. They notice the breakthrough but not the seasons of solitude, self-confrontation, dissolving, rebuilding, and vibrational refinement that preceded it. They believe the timing was magical, when in reality, the person had spent months or years shifting into a state where such timing could finally occur. Luck is not something that happens to you. Luck is something that grows within you. Every lucky moment in your life has been preceded by inner preparation, the subtle, often uncomfortable work of aligning your vibration with the reality you desire. This preparation is rarely glamorous. It looks like quiet evenings where you choose honesty over denial. It looks like releasing old stories that once kept you safe, but now keep you small. It looks like learning to regulate your nervous system so you no longer sabotage opportunities the moment they approach. It looks like healing wounds you never asked for but can no longer ignore. And as you change internally, life begins shifting around you. Not because fortune suddenly notices you, but because your field has become a match for experiences you were once unable to hold. Luck equals vibration plus readiness. Luck equals alignment plus capacity. Luck equals inner coherence meeting outer opportunity. Most people understand vibration. At least conceptually, they know their thoughts, emotions, and beliefs create an energetic signature. But what many overlook is readiness. Without readiness, even the most aligned vibration cannot anchor new experiences. Readiness is the capacity to hold what your vibration has called in. It is the ability to sustain abundance without collapsing into old patterns. It is the emotional maturity to handle opportunities without fearing them. It is the steadiness of presence that allows you to receive without sabotaging or shrinking. Readiness comes from the quiet moments, the ones no one praises you for, the ones where you show up for yourself long before the world shows up for you. This is why certain opportunities passed you by in the past, not because life was unfair, but because you were not yet able to hold the version of yourself required to receive them. A door can open, but if you do not feel safe on the other side of it, you will not walk through. A chance can appear, but if you still carry the vibration of self-doubt, you will misinterpret it as danger. Life respects your nervous system too much to overwhelm it. And so, what looks like bad luck is often life saying, "Not yet. You are still growing the foundation that will support this." Inner preparation is what turns chaos into clarity. It is what transforms a missed opportunity into a future triumph. It is what shapes your next chapter long before you notice anything shifting externally. And when the shift finally happens, people will call it luck. But you will know. You will know the nights you held yourself together when you wanted to disappear. You will know the mornings you chose presence over panic. You will know the forgiveness that freed you from a past timeline. You will know the boundaries you enforced that protected your becoming. You will know the version of yourself you had to release to step into the new one. Nothing about your luck will feel accidental. In the quantum field, nothing is random. Everything is relational. Everything responds to frequency. Everything is a mirror. Luck is what happens when your preparation becomes visible. Think of a musician. People marvel at their talent, unaware of the hours of practice behind the effortless performance. Think of a seedling finally breaking through the soil. To an untrained eye, it looks sudden, but the real growth happened in darkness, beneath the surface. Think of a heart that finally receives the love it always longed for. To outsiders, it looks fortunate, but the truth is that the heart had to soften, heal, and open before that love could recognize a home within it. Your life works the same way. Your luck will appear suddenly, but it grows slowly. There is a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when your inner preparation reaches a kind of vibrational threshold. You feel lighter not because circumstances changed, but because you changed. You feel steadier not because the world became safe, but because your nervous system stopped bracing for impact. You feel more receptive not because someone validated you, but because you finally stopped invalidating yourself. And then life begins to respond. People call it luck, but you will recognize it as resonance. You stop chasing and things begin approaching. You stop demanding and things begin unfolding. You stop gripping and things begin aligning. This is the moment when inner preparation meets outer opportunity. This is the moment when your frequency becomes audible to the universe. This is the moment when luck ceases to be a mystery and becomes a natural extension of who you've become. Because luck is not something you find. It's something you embody. It is what happens when you align your energy with the truth of your being and life. Recognizing that truth begins to move in your favor with a grace that feels almost supernatural, yet is nothing more than the physics of resonance, the mathematics of readiness, the quiet reward of a soul that has finally ripened into itself. 14. Every repeating lesson is a soul contract. There comes a point in your journey, usually after you have circled the same pain enough times to recognize its contours, when you finally begin to sense that life is not punishing you, nor is it careless with your suffering. What repeats is not random. What returns is not accidental. What keeps showing up through different people, different places, different decades does so because something within you is asking to be seen, honored, understood, and released. And until it is seen, it returns. Until it is understood, it resurfaces. Until you awaken to its message, it loops quietly through the fabric of your life like an echo traveling through the chambers of your soul. The psychic weight of these repetitions can be heavy. You may find yourself saying, "Why this again? Why am I meeting the same pattern in a new person? Why does this wound keep reopening? Why does this lesson keep circling back to me?" But the deeper truth is that the universe does not repeat anything to frustrate you. It repeats only what remains unresolved within you. It is not a form of punishment, it is a form of remembering. A reminder of the inner agreement your soul made long before this lifetime began. The agreement to heal what you once carried. To release what once bound you. To reclaim what was once forgotten. Repeating lessons are soul contracts, commitments your deeper self made to grow through certain themes until they no longer carry power over you. Some souls choose the lesson of abandonment, not to suffer endlessly, but to remember how to become whole. Some choose the lesson of rejection, not to break, but to recognize their own worth independent of applause. Some choose the lesson of betrayal, not to harden, but to finally trust themselves. Some choose the lesson of loss, not to despair, but to learn how to love without fear of impermanence. And you, through the patterns you've lived, the wounds you've felt, the cycles you've repeated, are learning something precise, something sacred, something that cannot be learned through success or ease. These lessons come back because they are the doorway into your evolution. If you look at the most painful chapters of your life with the eyes of your present awareness, you will see that each one carried a message you weren't ready to receive at the time. Perhaps you were younger, more fragile, less grounded. Perhaps your nervous system had not yet developed the capacity to hold certain truths. Perhaps your identity was still woven through beliefs you inherited, through fears you absorbed, through wounds you carried without knowing their origin. Life will not rush your awakening. Life will not force your expansion. Life will simply wait patiently, compassionately repeating the same pattern until you can finally meet it with consciousness instead of reactivity. The cycle ends not when circumstances change, but when you change. When your eyes no longer see from the wound but from the wisdom born of it. When your heart no longer collapses into fear but opens into clarity. When your body no longer braces for old outcomes because it knows you are not the same person anymore. The repetition is the universe checking gently. Have you remembered who you are yet? Are you ready to release this now? And when the answer becomes yes, when something inside you shifts with quiet certainty, the pattern dissolves. It doesn't need to return because the lesson has been fulfilled. The soul contract is complete. There is a subtle grace in recognizing these contracts. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this showing me about myself?" Because the moment you take that stance, the lesson begins to unravel. Not through force, but through awareness. Awareness is the solvent that dissolves karmic residue. Awareness is the light that exposes old patterns. Awareness is the doorway through which freedom enters. When you finally see the pattern, truly see it not with frustration, but with clarity, something inside you unlocks. The cycle loses its power. The emotional charge softens. The triggers quiet. And the next time life presents the familiar scenario, you feel differently. You respond differently. You choose differently. This is the moment your soul exhales. This is the moment the contract completes. This is the moment you step into a new timeline. Most people mistake repeating lessons as bad luck. But those who have walked through enough darkness, who have sat with their wounds long enough to hear their deeper messages, eventually realize the repetition was mercy. If life gave up after the first attempt, you would remain stuck. If life stopped sending the message after the second or third try, you would never evolve. The repetition is not cruelty, it is devotion. The universe is devoted to your growth, even when you resist it. And in your quietest state of honesty, you may admit something tender: you have repeated things. 2. You have revisited old versions of yourself long after they stopped serving you. You have returned to old stories, even when they hurt. You have recreated old dynamics because they felt familiar. You are not being judged for this. You are being held through it. Life is infinitely patient with your becoming. The universe never says, "You should have learned this by now." It only says, "Let's try again." This time, with a little more awareness, a little more compassion, a little more readiness, and each cycle brings you closer to the moment of awakening, the moment when the pattern no longer mirrors your inner world, because your inner world has shifted into truth. When that moment arrives, the loop dissolves with ease. People who once triggered you no longer have access to you. Situations that used to pull you in lose their magnetism. Choices that once felt impossible become clear. This is the quiet victory your soul has been guiding you toward. The lesson ends not when the world changes, but when you remember who you are beneath the wound that once blinded you. And in that remembering, you honor the contract, you release the pattern, and you step into a freedom that feels not like triumph, but like a long-awaited homecoming, a return to the self you were always meant to become. 15. The universe responds more honestly than you think. There comes a point, usually after life has stripped away enough illusions, after you have spoken enough beautiful words that changed nothing, after you have tried to stay positive, only to watch old patterns return, when you realize something both startling and deeply freeing. The universe does not respond to your vocabulary. It responds to your vibration. You cannot sweet-talk reality. You cannot charm it. You cannot seduce it with affirmations spoken through a trembling heart. Reality reads the pulse beneath the surface. It listens to the resonance living in your chest, not the sentences leaving your lips. You may stand in front of a mirror, repeating, "I am safe," while your nervous system curls itself into a knot. You may say, "I am abundant," while terror still grips your stomach each time you think about the future. You may whisper, "I am loved," while a single thought of being abandoned still tightens your throat. And the universe, faithful, precise, unconfused, will respond not to what you say, but to what you feel, not to the mask, but to the frequency behind it, not to the intention, but to the truth. Reality does not read your affirmations. It reads your heartbeat. This is not meant to shame you, far from it. This truth is meant to liberate you from the exhausting performance of trying to sound healed or spiritual or confident, when your inner world is asking for something much simpler: honesty. Because the moment you stop pretending, something inside you relaxes. And when you relax, your frequency rises naturally. And when your frequency rises, reality shifts without you having to force anything. The universe responds to coherence, not perfection. You cannot chant your way into alignment while your inner world is collapsing, but you can breathe your way into alignment. You can soften your way into alignment. You can tell yourself the truth and walk slowly toward healing, and the universe will respond to that truth far faster than it will ever respond to performance. Look back at your own life. You will see moments where you said all the right words, thought all the right thoughts, practiced all the right techniques, and nothing changed. And then, one day, when you finally broke open, or finally let go, or finally admitted you were afraid, tired, hurt, human, something in your reality shifted effortlessly. Why? Because authenticity carries more power than affirmation. Because the universe recognizes your real vibration, the way a tuning fork recognizes its matching tone. The field does not care if the words you speak are enlightened. It cares if the vibration behind them is true. This is why pretending to be strong keeps attracting experiences that test your strength. Pretending to be confident attracts situations that expose your insecurity. Pretending to be healed repeats the wound. Pretending to be abundant amplifies scarcity. But the moment you admit, with tenderness, "I'm not okay, but I'm willing to meet myself where I am," your field expands. Your breath deepens. Your vibration shifts from resistance to openness. And the universe responds immediately, not with judgment, but with rearrangement. Because you have finally become emotionally congruent. Congruence is the language of creation. Congruence is the signal the universe understands. Congruence is alignment made visible, when what you feel matches what you acknowledge. your field becomes coherent. And coherence is the strongest magnetic force you possess. A coherent heart calls in clarity. A coherent mind calls in order. A coherent nervous system calls in safety. A coherent spirit calls in the next timeline with ease. You do not need to be perfectly healed to be coherent. You only need to be honest. Honesty is the reset button of your vibration. Honesty is what stops the looping patterns. Honesty is what dissolves resistance. Honesty is what makes the universe shift in your favor. When you tell yourself the truth, even a painful one, your body relaxes because it no longer has to hold the tension of pretending. And that relaxation is what raises your frequency. Not affirmations, not forced positivity, not spiritual theatrics, just truth. There is nothing the universe responds to more quickly than a heart that finally stops running from itself. Imagine holding a tuning fork that vibrates at a certain tone. If you strike it while muting the vibration with your fingers, the sound becomes distorted. That distortion is forced positivity, forced confidence, forced gratitude, forced spiritual performance. Now imagine letting the tuning fork resonate freely in the air. No suppression, no gripping, no pretending, just vibration in its pure form. That is what honesty feels like to the universe. When your vibration is free, unhidden, unmasked, unforced, reality aligns almost instantly, because the field now has a clear signal to follow. You can see this in simple moments. You tell the truth about being exhausted, and support appears. You admit you don't know what to do next, and guidance arrives. You stop pretending to be fine, and life sends someone who can finally meet you where you are. You stop fighting for control, and the thing you were grasping for drops gently into your hands. The truth is that the universe has always been listening, but it listens beneath your words. It listens to the contraction you carry. It listens to the expansion you allow. It listens to the fears you hide. It listens to the courage you reveal. It listens to the old wounds still vibrating quietly in your chest. It listens to the new truths rising inside you, trembling, but real. And it responds with astonishing precision, not because it rewards honesty and punishes pretense, but because honesty is the only state where your vibration becomes stable enough for creation to take shape. So do not fear your truth. Do not hide your trembling. Do not dilute your humanity in an attempt to appear spiritual. Your tears are more magnetic than your affirmations. Your vulnerability is more powerful than your performance. Your sincerity is more aligned than any curated version of yourself. You cannot fool the universe. You do not need to. Life responds to the real you, the one beneath the armor, the one beneath the words, the one whose heartbeat carries the signature of a soul slowly returning to its own truth. And when that truth becomes your vibration, reality shifts in a way that feels less like effort and more like destiny finally catching up to you. 16. Allowing is the doorway to all creation. There is a moment on this path, usually after you've tried every method, every strategy, every forceful attempt to shape your reality, when a deeper truth begins to rise from within you. It rises quietly, without drama, like a gentle tide that has been approaching for years, and it whispers something simple yet life-altering. You were never meant to make life happen. You were meant to allow life to move through you. Creation has never been about force. It has never been about pushing the river or wrestling with the current. It has never been about chasing outcomes or micromanaging the timing of the universe. The deepest forms of creation, the ones that feel natural, graceful, almost mystical, come from a state of openness rather than effort, softness rather than strain, surrender rather than control. Allowing is not passivity. Allowing is participation without resistance. Allowing is collaboration with the intelligence that already knows the way. When you look back at the chapters of your life where things finally aligned, relationships that clicked unexpectedly, opportunities that seemed to fall into your lap, moments of clarity that arrived without warning, you will notice a common thread. Those moments came when you stopped gripping, when you stopped trying to control the outcome, when you stopped rehearsing worst-case scenarios, when you loosened your mind, softened your nervous system, and surrendered just enough for life to flow in. Allowing is the space you create within yourself so that reality has somewhere to land. Most people misunderstand creation. They think it's about pushing harder, trying more, doing more, thinking more positively, visualizing more intensely. But intensity is not alignment. Intensity is often fear in disguise, fear that if you stop trying, everything will fall apart. Fear that if you relax, life will forget you. Fear that if you let go, you will lose what little control you believe you have. Yet it is precisely this fear, the clenched, anxious, effortful energy that blocks the very things you want from entering your life. Creation is not born from tension. Creation is born from space. A seed cannot sprout in compacted soil. A breath cannot deepen in a tight chest. A new timeline cannot enter a field wrapped in fear. Allowing is the art of loosening your inner soil, of giving your desires oxygen, giving your emotions room to breathe, giving your life permission to unfold without your constant interference. There is a softness required here, a willingness to trust that the universe is working with you, not against you, a willingness to trust that what is meant for you does not need to be chased, a willingness to accept that your job is not to force outcomes, but to become the vibrational match through openness, not through strain. The truth is that life knows what you are ready for long before you do. It senses where your nervous system is stable and where it is still fragile. It senses where your identity is expanding and where old patterns still cling. It senses where your frequency is coherent and where fear has tightened your field. Allowing is the state in which you stop interfering with that intelligence. You stop rushing it. You stop doubting it. You stop arguing with its timing. You become available to what you once tried to demand. Imagine holding a bird in your hands. Grip too tightly, and you injure it. Hold too loosely, and it flies away. Allowing is the gentle middle, your hands open, steady, welcoming but not possessive. Creation thrives in that openness. There is also a physics to allowing. The moment your energy relaxes, your vibration rises. The moment your vibration rises, you enter resonance with higher timelines. The moment resonance occurs, reality begins rearranging itself effortlessly around you. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped blocking it. This is why breakthroughs often happen right after breakdowns. When you are too exhausted to continue forcing your way through life, the resistance collapses. And when resistance collapses, allowing begins. You open not because you choose to, but because you have no energy left to fight. And in that openness, life rushes in. You may think those moments are coincidence. They're not. They're the mathematics of surrender. Allowing means you stop trying to be the architect of every detail and instead become the steward of your inner state. You take responsibility not for the outcome, but for the vibration you hold as you move through the world. And when your vibration is calm, receptive, and coherent, creation becomes inevitable. There is a gentle confidence that grows from this. You no longer panic when things seem slow. You no longer grasp for answers. You no longer beg reality to hurry. You understand that nothing arrives until you are open enough to receive it, spacious enough to hold it, and aligned enough to sustain it. You trust the timing because you trust your unfolding. Allowing also means giving yourself permission to feel without collapsing, to rest without guilt, to soften without fear of falling apart. When you allow your emotions to move through you, your field becomes clearer. When you allow your mind to quiet, your intuition becomes louder. When you allow your heart to heal at its own pace, your frequency rises more naturally than any affirmation or spiritual technique could ever produce. This is the paradox of creation. The less you try to control, the more reality becomes moldable. The less you demand, the more receptive your field becomes. The less you interfere with the intelligence of the universe, the more that intelligence begins working unmistakably on your behalf. Allowing is not inaction. It is aligned action. It is the action that springs from clarity, not fear. From inspiration, not pressure. From resonance, not desperation. It is the kind of action that feels like a quiet yes from the deepest part of your being. An action taken not to force an outcome, but to express the alignment that is already present within you. And then, as if drawn by invisible threads, the things you once chased begin moving toward you. Opportunities unfold. Solutions reveal themselves. People show up at the exact moment your heart is ready. Paths open where you once saw only walls, not because you pushed harder, but because you made room. You don't make creation happen. You allow creation to enter. Just as the breath enters when you release the exhale, just as the tide returns when the shore recedes, just as the dawn arrives when the night finally releases its grip, your blessings enter when you loosen the tension around your becoming. And when you finally feel this, not as philosophy, but as lived truth, you step into a new way of existing. A way where creation feels less like striving and more like unfolding. Less like pressure and more like receiving. Less like controlling and more like allowing. This is the doorway to all creation. Not force, not effort, not perfection, but space, openness, willingness, and a quiet trust in the intelligence that has been waiting patiently for you to finally let it in. 17. Vibration comes before form. There is a truth you only fully understand after life has broken you open enough times. After you have chased outcomes until you finally collapse into yourself. After you have lived through seasons where nothing changed until something inside you did. It is the truth that reality is not shaped by effort, nor by strategy, nor by the perfect sequence of actions. Reality is shaped by vibration, the subtle, unspoken, deeply felt frequency that radiates from you long before any physical manifestation arrives. To many people, this truth sounds poetic, but to anyone who has lived it, it is simply how the universe works. You must feel the thing you want before the thing you want can find you. This is not fantasy. It is resonance. It is the fundamental principle of a vibrational universe like attracts like. Coherence attracts coherence. And nothing physical can appear in your life if its frequency cannot find a matching field within you. Most people try to create from the outside in. They chase, force, worry, plan, and fight their way toward a future, believing the manifestation lies somewhere out there. But if your vibration is rooted in fear, longing, lack, or desperation, every action you take, no matter how intelligent or determined, will echo that vibration. And the universe, painfully precise, will respond to the frequency, not the effort. You may spend years wanting something, but if your frequency contradicts that desire, life will show you the contradiction instead of the desire. This is why people can want love deeply yet attract partners who cannot meet them. This is why people can want abundance desperately yet live in cycles of scarcity. This is why people can want peace while living in turmoil. Wanting is not enough. Trying is not enough. Even longing is not enough. You cannot meet a reality whose vibration you refuse to embody. Vibration comes first. Form comes second. If you imagine tuning into a radio station, you understand this intuitively. The song you want to hear is already being broadcast. It exists. But until you tune the frequency of your device to match that station, you cannot receive the music. You can shout, demand, beg, or twist the antenna in frustration, but the song won't come through until your alignment is correct. Your life works in precisely the same way. Not metaphorically, literally. The reality you want already exists in the quantum field, broadcasting its frequency. Your job is not to create it. Your job is to tune yourself to it. And tuning is an emotional act, not an intellectual one. You tune through feeling, through holding in your body the emotional signature of the reality you seek. You must feel the safety before safety arrives. You must feel the love before the relationship appears. You must feel the relief before the solution comes. You must feel the possibility before the opportunity manifests. You must feel the expansion before the new path reveals itself. This is not delusion. This is alignment. When you feel something as if it is already living within you, your vibration becomes a match for that timeline. And the moment the match is made, the physical world begins reorganizing itself, not through magic, but through resonance. The steps appear. The synchronicities cluster. People show up, paths open, ideas land, doors unlock, not because you forced them, but because your vibration finally became visible to the universe. You stopped saying, "I hope it happens," and started feeling, "I can sense this reality already forming." This shift, subtle, internal, invisible to the eye, is what creates everything. And yet, it cannot be faked. You cannot affirm your way into vibrational alignment if every cell in your body is bracing for disappointment. You cannot chant your way into coherence if fear is weaving quietly through your breath. You cannot pretend your way into expansion if your nervous system is still carrying the weight of old stories. Vibration does not respond to your words. It responds to your truth. This is why emotional honesty is essential. Before you can feel the vibration of the reality you desire, you must clear the vibrations that contradict it. You must hold your fears with compassion until they soften. You must process your pain with gentleness until it loosens its grip. You must let your nervous system exhale after a lifetime of bracing. This softening is what makes space for the new vibration to enter. When your heart relaxes, even slightly, it becomes capable of feeling the frequency of a new timeline. And that feeling, soft, tender, fragile at first, is the beginning of manifestation. You may not trust it immediately. You may question whether it is real. But if you nurture it not forcefully, not obsessively, but gently, it grows. And as it grows, your field becomes more coherent. Coherence is what summons form. A coherent vibration is unmistakable. It is the state where your body, mind, heart, and energy speak the same language. Nothing is contradicting. Nothing is resisting. Nothing is pulling in opposite directions. You become clear, steady, aligned, and in that alignment, the universe recognizes your signal the way a tuning fork recognizes its partner across a room. You do not need intensity. You do not need perfection. You only need consistency of frequency. A calm, steady resonance is more powerful than 1,000 frantic efforts. A single moment of true alignment can accomplish what months of striving cannot. And if you examine your own life, you will see evidence of this. Think of the times something just happened suddenly, an opportunity, a connection, a breakthrough, right after you had surrendered, right after you had softened, right after you had found a moment of stillness. That stillness was your vibrational reset. That softening was your alignment. You felt the possibility before it appeared, and the possibility recognized you. There is a wisdom older than your fear living inside you, whispering that you no longer need to push reality into shape. You only need to hold the frequency of what you are becoming. When your vibration carries the signature of your desired timeline, the physical world has no choice but to follow. This is the law. Not spiritual law, energetic law. Not metaphor, physics. Vibration precedes form. Always. Before anything arrives in your life, it arrives in your field. Before it appears in your hands, it appears in your nervous system. Before it takes shape in the world, it takes shape in your emotion. So feel it. Let your body become the home of the future you seek. Let your heart learn its rhythm. Let your frequency carry its blueprint. And then watch quietly, steadily, gently as the form that once felt distant begins to move toward you as if recognizing a familiar voice calling it home. 18. What you notice begins to move toward you. There is a quiet shift that happens in your life the moment you understand that awareness is not passive. Awareness is magnetic. Whatever you allow into the field of your perception, whether consciously or unconsciously, begins to take shape around you. It is not magic. Though it often feels like it, it is not coincidence. Though others may call it that. It is simply the nature of consciousness. Where your attention goes, your reality follows. You can see this operating in the smallest, most ordinary ways. You think about buying a red car, and suddenly the streets seem full of them. You hear a certain phrase for the first time, and then you encounter it repeatedly in conversations, online, in books. You feel drawn to a certain idea, and life begins placing it in your path again and again until you finally pay attention. Most people shrug and chalk it up to chance. But anyone who has lived mindfully, anyone who has walked through seasons of awakening, eventually notices the pattern. Your awareness is the invitation that reality responds to. The red car was always there. The phrase was always there. The possibility was always there. But you were not attuned to it yet. Reality is infinite, too vast, too layered, too multidimensional for your mind to process all at once. So your consciousness filters, selects, highlights, and whatever it highlights begins to appear more often, not because the world has changed, but because your perception has shifted into alignment with that frequency. Awareness is a doorway. Attention is the key. Perception is the signal the universe listens to. If you continuously notice scarcity, you tune yourself to lack, and life begins showing you more of it, not as punishment, but as reflection. The field mirrors what your awareness claims. If you notice opportunities, you begin spotting them where others see nothing. If you notice synchronicities, they multiply. If you notice beauty, it surrounds you. If you notice fear, it grows louder. If you notice blessings, they bloom in unexpected ways. What you notice is not harmless, it is creative. You have walked through enough darkness to know this intimately. You've had phases where all you could see was what was missing, and those phases pulled you deeper into hunger, deeper into longing, deeper into the belief that life was withholding something from you. Then there were phases where you softened just enough to see the smallest signs of support, a stranger's kindness, a moment of clarity, a sense of relief, and suddenly life felt different. Not because circumstances changed radically, but because your awareness finally found a crack of light. The world you live in is not the one outside you. It is the one your mind filters for you, and your filter is shaped moment by what you choose to notice. Imagine your awareness like a flashlight in a darkened room. The room is full of objects, each representing a different timeline, possibility, or emotional state. Shine your light on fear, and the room becomes frightening. Shine it on gratitude, and the room begins to glow. Shine it on lack, and everything feels scarce. Shine it on possibility, and the entire room rearranges itself into a landscape of potential. Nothing changed in the room. The light changed in your hand. Awareness is creative not because it forces reality, but because it reveals reality. It reveals what was always available but previously invisible to you. And once it is revealed, your mind, your energy, your choices begin to shift in ways that draw that revealed experience into form. This is why so many of your past breakthroughs began with a small shift in perception rather than a dramatic effort. The moment you saw something differently, your worth, your path, your wound, your possibility, your frequency changed. And the moment your frequency changed, reality began to reorganize itself to match your new awareness. Awareness is the steering wheel of your timeline. It determines what you notice, and what you notice determines what you attract. There is a tenderness in recognizing how much you shape your life simply through the quality of your attention. Not through force, not through discipline, not through perfection, but through the gentle act of noticing differently. You don't need to fight the old patterns. You only need to redirect your attention. You don't need to chase new realities. You only need to tune into them. You don't need to beg the universe for signs. You only need to notice the ones already here. Because once you begin noticing a new frequency piece, love, abundance, alignment, synchronicity, that frequency begins noticing you in return. It starts flowing toward you, weaving itself into your days, appearing in small, soft ways at first, then in larger, unmistakable expressions. Awareness is not merely perception. It is participation. Each time you notice something, you say to the universe, "This is real to me. Show me more." And the universe listens. It always has. It always will. This is why your inner world matters so deeply. When you tend to your inner state, when you soothe your fear, soften your heart, slow your breath, and allow yourself to feel differently, you begin noticing different things. And what you notice determines what grows. The red car phenomenon is not a trick of the mind. It is a preview of how creation works. Awareness is the signal. Vibration is the transmitter. Reality is the echo. So begin noticing with intention. Notice the moments of ease. Notice the breath that comes without effort. Notice the people who support you rather than drain you. Notice the opportunities that whisper instead of shout. Notice the way your energy shifts when something resonates as truth. Notice the doors that open softly in front of you. The more you notice what aligns with the life you are becoming, the more that life begins to gather itself around you. And one day, without knowing the exact moment it happened, your entire reality will feel different, not because the world changed, but because you finally noticed the version of the world that had been waiting for you all along. 19. You are never separated from spiritual support. There comes a moment in every sincere seeker's journey when the loneliness becomes almost unbearable. You look around and see people moving through their lives with certainty, while you feel suspended in a quiet, trembling space, not quite lost, but not yet found. And in those moments, you may whisper to yourself that you are alone, unsupported, unguided. You may believe that life has forgotten your name, that the universe has stepped back, that something essential has slipped out of reach. But the truth, felt only after years of breaking open and coming back to yourself, is far gentler and far more profound. You have never been without support. You have simply forgotten where it comes from. Spiritual support does not descend from the sky in the form of a miracle. It rises from within you as the voice of your own expanded self, the version of you that exists beyond fear, beyond identity, beyond the story you tell about who you are. This broader self, this luminous intelligence, this quiet field of knowing has been walking beside you since the beginning. But because its voice is subtle, because it speaks in vibration rather than language, you often mistake its silence for absence. It has never been absent. It has only been waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear it. You may think of guidance as something external, a sign, a message, an intervention, a saving grace. But spiritual support has always been an inside-out phenomenon. It is your higher awareness speaking to you from the dimension of your own wholeness. It is the version of you who has already lived the clarity, already stepped into the peace, already healed what you are learning to face. This larger self is not separate from you. It is you, just the part of you that remembers. When you feel a sudden calm in the middle of anxiety, that is support. When you hear an inner whisper that says, "This isn't your path," that is support. When you feel drawn to a new idea you don't fully understand yet, that is support. When synchronicity nudges you gently toward a choice, that is support. When something in your chest unclenches after years of gripping, that is support. None of these come from outside. They arise from the deeper layers of your own consciousness. You often call it intuition. You call it inner knowing. You call it instinct. But what you are really feeling is communication from the timeless version of you, the self that sees your life from a higher altitude. The self that knows the terrain long before your mind does. And the more you soften, the easier it becomes to feel this presence. Spiritual support becomes louder when your fear becomes quieter. It becomes clearer when you stop forcing outcomes. It becomes steadier when you stop abandoning yourself. It becomes recognizable when you stop expecting it to look dramatic. This support does not speak in lightning bolts. It speaks in alignment. It speaks in the way your stomach tightens when something is wrong. It speaks in the way your chest expands when something is right. It speaks in the opportunities that feel strangely familiar. It speaks in the people who show up with the exact energy your soul needs. It speaks in the sudden clarity that breaks through confusion. It speaks through your body, your emotions, your intuition, your awareness, because those are the tools of your inner guidance system. You have never been disconnected from it. You have only been distracted. Think back to your darkest moments. Notice how support showed up not always as rescue, but as resilience. Not always as answers, but as endurance. Not always as solutions, but as a voice that said, "Keep going." Support is not always comfort. Sometimes it is strength. Sometimes it is the truth you didn't want to hear. Sometimes It is the ending you tried to avoid. Sometimes it is the loss that forced you to return to yourself. But even then, it was guiding you. It was protecting you from timelines that were too small for the person you were becoming. Spiritual support is not an external presence stepping in to fix your path. It is your own expansiveness rearranging your life from the inside. The more you trust this, the more supported you feel. The more supported you feel, the more aligned your choices become. The more aligned your choices become, the smoother your timeline unfolds. This is why the most powerful spiritual awakening is not realizing you are guided. It is realizing you are the guide. You are the one whispering from beyond the fear. You are the one nudging yourself toward growth. You are the one calling yourself back home. You are the one sending synchronicities like breadcrumbs along the path. You are the one reminding yourself, you have not been abandoned. You have been accompanied all along. And when you begin to feel this truth not as a concept, but as a presence, your entire relationship with life shifts. The world feels less threatening. Your choices feel less pressured. Your heart feels less alone. You begin to move through your days with a softness that comes from knowing you are held, not by something distant, but by the most expansive part of yourself. Spiritual support is not a gift for the chosen. It is the natural state of every soul that remembers its own depth. You are never asking the universe for help. You are always asking yourself to remember the help that has been there all along. The moment you realize this, fear loses its authority. Loneliness loses its sharpness, and your path becomes illuminated from within not by external miracles, but by the quiet radiance of the larger self that has always been guiding you toward the life you were meant to live. 20. Desire is not selfish. There comes a moment in your inner journey, usually after years of shrinking yourself, years of trying not to want too much, years of mistaking humility for self-erasure, when a deeper understanding begins to rise. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't come wrapped in spiritual theatrics. It enters the way dawn enters. A quiet field, gently, unhurriedly, almost unnoticed until the whole landscape is lit. The understanding is this: your desires are not selfish. They are invitations. Desire is not greed. Desire is direction. Desire is the language of your becoming. From the outside, desire may look like longing for a better life, a deeper love, a more peaceful existence, a clearer path. But from the inside, desire is something else entirely. It is the pull of the universe guiding you toward the version of yourself that already exists in potential. It is the whisper of your expanded self saying, "This is who you could be, if only you would stop dimming your own light." You were never meant to suppress your desires. You were meant to listen to them. Not every desire is a command, but every desire is a clue. You do not crave something unless a part of you is already aligned with the possibility of having it. You do not hunger for a particular life unless that life contains a truth meant for you. The longing itself is evidence that the next version of you is calling. And yet, so many people treat desire like an enemy. They feel guilty for wanting more peace, more freedom, more authenticity. They feel selfish for wanting a relationship that feels nourishing rather than draining. They feel ashamed for dreaming of a life that fits their soul more honestly than the one they've been taught to endure. But here is the truth you only learn after walking through enough darkness to appreciate the light. Desire is not the voice of the ego. Desire is the evidence of your evolution. Ego wants attention. Soul wants expansion. Ego wants validation. Soul wants alignment. Ego wants to prove itself. Soul wants to express itself. When you feel a desire that softens you, expands you, awakens you, or calls you to rise even if it scares you, that desire is not selfish. It is sacred. It is the inner architecture of your next timeline taking shape. You have never desired anything that wasn't connected to your becoming. Even the things you desire that seem material: money, stability, freedom, carry spiritual significance. Money is not greed. Money is permission. Stability is not complacency. Stability is safety. Freedom is not rebellion. Freedom is authenticity. These desires do not pull you away from your path, they prepare you for it. Desire is the universe shaping you through longing. Every longing is an arrow pointing toward a version of yourself you haven't met yet. It is not pushing you outward, it is pulling you inward, into your truth, into your potential, into your alignment. This is why suppressing your desires never works. You cannot silence the language of your soul. You can delay it, avoid it, argue with it, numb it, but eventually, it returns. Sometimes louder, sometimes gentler, until you finally pay attention. Desire is a compass, not an indulgence. It guides you toward the relationships that will expand you. It guides you toward the work that will awaken your gifts. It guides you toward the experiences that will strengthen your wisdom. It guides you toward the environments that support your growth. Your soul uses desire the way a tree uses sunlight, not to become something else, but to grow into what it already is. Wanting more is not a betrayal of who you are. It is the honoring of who you are becoming. And desire does not always take the form of excitement. Sometimes it comes disguised as restlessness, the quiet ache that tells you a chapter is closing. Sometimes it comes as discomfort, the gentle pressure that tells you you've outgrown something familiar. Sometimes it comes as grief, the painful awareness that something once meaningful is no longer aligned. Even your discomfort is desire in disguise. It is the universe pushing you out of rooms you no longer belong in. You might think the desire for change means you are ungrateful. But gratitude does not prevent evolution. Gratitude simply opens the heart so you can evolve without fear. You can be grateful for what has been and still feel the pull of what wants to be born. Wanting more does not mean you are empty. It means your consciousness is expanding. And here is the most liberating truth: your desires are not random. They are encoded with the intelligence of your highest self. You desire peace because a peaceful timeline is calling you. You desire love because you are ready to hold more love than before. You desire abundance because your soul is expanding into greater capacity. You desire freedom because the truth inside you can no longer stay confined. You desire growth because you remember somewhere deep in your being that you were meant for more than survival. The universe is not testing you through desire. It is guiding you through desire. The things you long for are not temptations pulling you away from your path. They are signposts helping you find your way back to it. And when you finally allow yourself to want without shame, something softens in your field. Something relaxes. Something opens. And in that opening, your vibration rises not through force, but through alignment. And the moment your vibration rises, reality begins to shift, not because you demanded something, but because you stop denying the truth of what your soul has been trying to tell you. Desire is not selfish. Desire is self-revelation. It is the universe whispering, "This is who you are becoming. Let yourself grow toward it." 21. When you force, you create interference. There is a moment many of us remember all too well, the moment when, despite every effort, nothing seems to move. You push harder. You think more intensely. You plan. You analyze. You pray. You repeat affirmations. You try to keep your energy high. And yet reality stays still, as if frozen in place. And in the quiet, after all that effort, a soft truth begins to emerge from beneath the noise. Every time you force, you broadcast lack. And lack can only call more lack. Forcing is not strength. Forcing is fear dressed in determination. Forcing is the trembling belief that if you stop pushing, life will abandon you. You know this sensation well: the tightening of your chest, the shallow breath, the restless mind that insists something must be done right now or everything will fall apart. You call it urgency, but your body knows better. Your body feels the contraction. Your nervous system feels the pressure. Your energy field feels the static. And that static is what blocks the very things you long for. When you force, you do not create clarity. You create interference. In the quantum field, coherence is everything. Coherence is the state where your intention, your emotion, and your energy line up without contradiction. But forcing tears coherence apart. It sends mixed signals into the field. Your words say, "I want this." But your vibration says, "I am terrified I won't get it." Your actions say, "I'm manifesting." But your nervous system says, I am in danger. And the universe, loyal and exact, responds not to your intention, but to your vibration. You cannot fool the field with effort. You cannot mask fear with intensity. You cannot outrun misalignment with work. Every time you push from a place of urgency, you broadcast the frequency of not enough time, not enough support, not enough progress, not enough worth, not enough certainty. And life, reflecting your vibration with precision, shows you more situations that echo not enoughness. Forcing is the frequency of scarcity disguised as action. Look back at the times in your life when things finally shifted. The breakthrough didn't come during the frantic push. It didn't arrive in the middle of panic. It didn't appear because you forced harder. It came after the exhaustion, after the surrender, after the collapse of resistance. It came when you finally stopped interfering with your own path. Because forcing is interference. Allowing is alignment. In your most honest moments, you can feel the difference inside your body. Forcing feels tight, like trying to squeeze life through a straw. Alignment feels open, like trusting the river to carry you downstream. Forcing feels like gripping something that keeps slipping away. Alignment feels like unclenching your hands and letting what is meant for you settle in its own time. Forcing feels like panic. Alignment feels like quiet readiness. You have lived long enough to recognize the internal cost of forcing, the burnout, the self-doubt, the emotional turbulence, the patterns repeating themselves because the energy behind your actions never changes, the inner voice whispering, this isn't the way. You cannot bully the universe into delivering what your vibration is not ready to receive. Even when your intentions are good, forcing comes from fear, fear of losing, fear of falling behind, fear of being left without what you desire. And fear compresses your energy. It closes your field. It makes the path narrower than it needs to be. Creation requires spaciousness. Forcing destroys space. Creation requires trust. Forcing collapses trust into urgency. Creation requires alignment. Forcing splinters alignment into noise. The universe is exquisitely sensitive to the quality of your energy. A single moment of relaxed coherence is more powerful than a month of frantic pushing. A single breath taken in surrender carries more magnetic power than hours spent trying to control outcomes. Because the field responds to the truth behind your actions, not the effort of your actions. When you act from fear, you amplify fear. When you act from desperation, you amplify delay. When you act from contraction, you amplify closed doors. But when you act from alignment, from the soft, grounded, open space within you, your field becomes clear again. Your vibration rises without effort. Your nervous system relaxes. Your intuition returns. Your decisions become cleaner, quieter, wiser, and the path opens not through struggle but through resonance. There is a rhythm to creation, and it cannot be rushed. Not because the universe is slow, but because your energy needs time to become a match for what you're asking for. Forcing interrupts that process. It tries to pull the fruit from the tree before it has ripened. It tries to birth a timeline that your field is not yet stable enough to hold. But when you stop forcing, when you soften into trust instead of tightening into urgency, something shifts. The interference quiets. The static dissolves. The field clears. And suddenly, the very thing you were chasing begins to move toward you, not because you demanded it, but because you became receptive to it. Receptivity is impossible in a clenched state. Possibility is invisible when your mind is frantic. Clarity cannot enter a field full of static. You already know this. You've lived this. The job you wanted appeared only after you stopped obsessing. The relationship improved only after you released the pressure. The breakthrough came only after you surrendered your timeline. The solution emerged only when you let the problem breathe. Forcing never gave you what you wanted, but letting go often did. You do not need to stop wanting. You only need to stop gripping. You do not need to stop dreaming. You only need to stop interfering. You do not need to stop taking action. You only need to take action from alignment rather than fear. When you relax the tension inside your chest, you open the field. When you breathe into your desire, instead of pushing against it, you become magnetic. When you stop trying to control how and when something arrives, it finally has space to arrive. This is not passivity. It is energetic precision. Your life does not move because you push. It moves because your vibration becomes clear. And clarity begins not with more effort but with less resistance, a soft, steady, quiet return to the truth you already know every time you stop forcing. Your path unfolds the way it was always meant to. 22. Emotional imagining is more powerful than visual imagining. There is a turning point in every inner journey. A moment when you realize that creation does not begin in the mind's pictures but in the body's truth. You can close your eyes and paint the most detailed scene: your future home, your ideal partner, the life you dream of. But if the picture carries no emotional resonance, it remains only a mental sketch, thin and fragile, unable to impress itself upon the deeper layers of your being. But a single moment, 5 seconds of felt truth, of emotional coherence, of genuine inner expansion, that moment has the power to rearrange timelines. The universe does not respond to what you see. It responds to what you feel. A picture is only the shell. Emotion is the electricity that brings it to life. So many people exhaust themselves trying to visualize perfectly. They think if they can just see the scene clearly enough, the manifestation will appear. They adjust details, colors, angles. They imagine outcomes like a director adjusting lights on a stage. But the field does not speak the language of images. The field speaks the language of vibration, and vibration is carried through emotion, not imagination. A 5-minute visualization with no emotion is like drawing a map on water. The moment you release attention, it dissolves. But a 5-second feeling deep, real, embodied imprints itself on your field so strongly that the universe can sense your signal long after your conscious mind moves on. That feeling becomes a beacon, a kind of energetic signature that reality can track, respond to, and harmonize with. You only need a few seconds of truth to shift an entire trajectory. Think back to the moments that changed you. They were rarely long. They were flashes, moments where something in your chest expanded, moments where you suddenly understood your worth, moments where you felt clarity wash through you like warm light. Those moments were short, but their impact was permanent. This is how emotional imagining works. A single breath of alignment goes deeper than hours of forced visuals, because emotions bypass the mind and speak directly to the quantum field. Emotion is the bridge between who you are now and who you are becoming. Emotion is the way your future self taps you on the shoulder. When you feel something deeply, even briefly, you create a vibrational imprint that says, "This is real to me. This is already within me. This is a timeline I am ready for." And the universe responds, not to your effort, but to your coherence. Imagine pouring water onto dry soil. If the soil is tight and compacted, the water sits on top and evaporates. That is what visualizing without emotion is like. Your mind creates an image, but your body cannot absorb it. But when the soil softens, when your heart opens, when your breath deepens, the water seeps in. It nourishes. It changes the ground from the inside. That is emotional imagining. You become fertile for the new reality. This is why trying too hard to see it clearly often blocks the process. Clarity of image is irrelevant. You could visualize your desire as a blur, a color, even a simple sensation in your body, and it would be far more powerful than a perfect picture devoid of feeling. The universe is not moved by the crispness of the image. It is moved by the authenticity of the emotion. You do not need to picture your dream home. You just need to feel the safety and softness of belonging. You do not need to picture your future partner's face. You just need to feel the warmth of being met deeply. You do not need to picture the details of your abundance. You just need to feel the freedom of exhaling without fear. The emotion is the magnet. The picture is just the story the mind uses to understand the pull. Emotion activates your timeline. Emotion opens your field. Emotion invites the next version of reality to reveal itself. If you dissolve the picture but keep the emotion, the manifestation still comes. If you dissolve the emotion but keep the picture, nothing moves. Because emotion is the quantum imprint. But there is another layer, one you only understand once you have walked through your own shadows. Emotional imagining requires honesty. You cannot fake a feeling. You cannot force excitement when your heart is carrying fear. You cannot pretend to feel abundance when your body is still bracing for survival. Authenticity is the gateway. Before you can feel your future self, you must be willing to feel your present self. Even if it trembles, even if it aches, even if it is still raw. A 5-second honest breath is more powerful than a 5-minute forced visualization. Honesty creates space. Space creates openness. Openness creates emotional resonance. And emotional resonance creates reality. When you allow yourself to soften, even a little, you create enough room for the future frequency to enter your field. In that moment, it doesn't matter whether you see a picture. Your body becomes the portal. Your heart becomes the magnet. Your breath becomes the messenger between timelines. The field listens, not to your imagination, to your vibration. And vibration is always carried through emotion. So let go of the pressure to visualize perfectly. Let go of the belief that manifestation is a mental exercise. Let go of the idea that more effort equals more results. Feel for 5 seconds. Let that feeling be real. Let it ripple through your chest like a small, gentle wave, and then release it. Because the wave you create in those 5 seconds will continue moving through the field long after you return to your day carrying your signal, calling your future, summoning into form the reality that has been waiting for your vibration to finally become clear enough to guide it home. 23. The quantum field always prioritizes stability. There comes a point in your journey, usually after years of swinging between hope and doubt, between clarity and confusion, between surges of belief and waves of fear, when you begin to understand a truth so quiet, yet so foundational, that it rewrites the way you relate to creation itself. It is this: the quantum field does not respond to intensity, it responds to stability. It does not care how fiercely you believe for 1 hour if you collapse into fear for the next 23. It does not respond to emotional spikes or bursts of confidence. It follows the frequency you hold the most consistently, the tone that hums beneath your everyday breath, the vibration you settle into when no one is watching. All creation, no matter how mystical it appears, depends not on how loudly you declare your belief, but on how steadily you can sustain it. And this truth is far gentler than it sounds, because it frees you from the exhausting pressure of trying to feel powerful all the time. You do not need to live in constant euphoria. You do not need to pretend to be fearless. You do not need to maintain some impossibly high vibration every second of the day. The universe is not scoring your emotional peaks. It is reading your emotional baseline. The field is always asking you one simple question: what frequency do you return to? Because that is your true signal. If your dominant vibration is anxiety, no matter how many moments of belief you force, the field reads anxiety. If your dominant vibration is trust, no matter how many moments of fear appear, the field reads trust. If your dominant vibration is openness, no matter how many moments you wobble, the field reads openness. Stability is not perfection. Stability is consistency. Stability is the emotional home you keep coming back to. Look honestly at your life, at the manifestations that finally arrived after long seasons of waiting. Notice that they didn't come during your strongest emotional highs. They came after you learned to calm down, after you stopped chasing, after you stopped forcing, after you stopped begging the universe to hurry. They came when your energy softened enough to hold a steady tone, when you were no longer vibrating in wild ups and downs, but resting in a quieter, more grounded belief. Stability is the signature of readiness. You cannot receive what you cannot stabilize. The quantum field will not deliver what your nervous system cannot hold. This is not punishment, it is protection. Imagine receiving your biggest desire while still living in emotional chaos. You would sabotage it without meaning to. Fear would steal it. Old patterns would distort it. Scarcity would choke it. This is why the universe waits. This is why certain timelines delay. Not because you are unworthy, but because you are still becoming stable enough to maintain the vibration required to sustain what you're asking for. In the quantum mechanics of consciousness, stability is safety. A stable field is predictable. A stable field is coherent. A stable field is easy for the universe to lock onto. When your vibration fluctuates wildly, the signal becomes fuzzy. Like trying to tune a radio station that keeps drifting. You hear a few moments of clear music, your desire, then static, your fear, then clarity, your hope, then interference, your doubt. The universe is not confused. It simply cannot amplify a signal that keeps changing. This is why small, steady shifts matter more than dramatic emotional highs. A quiet belief practiced daily has more power than a burst of overwhelming faith that lasts only minutes. A gentle, stable openness carries more weight than intense motivation. A soft, repeated, yes, inside your chest creates more magnetism than a desperate, I need this to happen now. Your nervous system is the stabilizer of your field. Your body is the container of your signal. Your breath is the anchor of your frequency. Stability comes when your inner world begins to trust itself again. You become stable not by forcing yourself to believe, but by caring for the parts of you that still don't. You become stable not by suppressing fear, but by soothing it. You become stable not by avoiding doubt, but by meeting it with compassion. Every time you choose gentleness, your field becomes clearer. Every time you choose patience, your vibration becomes more coherent. Every time you choose presence over panic, you deepen the stability the quantum field recognizes. Stability is emotional maturity. It is relational maturity with yourself, with your desire, with the universe. The field responds to people who can hold a frequency without gripping it, to people who can believe without demanding, to people who can desire without collapsing, to people who can trust without timelines. And here is the beautiful paradox. The moment your vibration becomes stable, you stop needing the manifestation so desperately. And the moment you stop needing it, the field can deliver it effortlessly. Because your signal is finally clean. Your job is not to be powerful. Your job is to be steady. Steady in your breath. Steady in your energy. Steady in your belief that you are held by something larger, wiser, deeper than the fear that rises in your chest. Manifestation becomes simple when your field becomes calm. Reality becomes responsive when your vibration becomes predictable. Life becomes generous when your signal becomes stable. And you reach this stability, not through intensity, but through tenderness, the tenderness of holding your own heart with the same patience the universe has been holding you with your entire life. 24. The present moment is the only real doorway. There is a certain kind of fatigue that settles in after years spent chasing the future, years spent leaning forward in time, trying to outrun your own uncertainty, trying to arrive somewhere that always seems just a little bit farther than your fingertips can reach. And somewhere along that long, breathless path, a quiet truth begins to reveal itself. You do not create the future in the future. You create it in the only place that has ever been real, right here. In the state of your being, in the vibration you hold in this very moment. The future is not a destination waiting down the road. The future is an echo of the frequency you are embodying right now. Everything you think you're waiting for, the breakthrough, the opportunity, the clarity, the healing, the shift, the new timeline, none of it lives in some faraway place. It all lives here, folded inside this breath, waiting for you to become present enough to access it. Because presence is not simply a spiritual ideal. Presence is a mechanism. Presence is a technology. Presence is the doorway between who you have been and who you are becoming. You do not step into your future by thinking about it. You step into it by aligning your energy in the present moment until the future has no choice but to reshape itself around you. Most people try to create from the wrong location. They stand mentally in the future, imagining what might go wrong, trying to predict outcomes, trying to control every variable, trying to anticipate disappointment before it arrives. But creation does not respond to anticipation. Creation responds to alignment. And alignment can only happen here in the present, in the body, in the breath, in the awareness that does not lean forward or look backward but settles gently into what is. The present moment is not small. It is not a pause between chapters. It is the portal through which all timelines emerge. When you inhabit the present moment fully, your energy becomes coherent. Your mind stops scattering. Your nervous system steadies. Your breath deepens. And as your field becomes stable, life becomes malleable again. You become a tuning fork for the timeline that matches your state. Not your hopes, not your fears, not your memories, only your state. This is why the present moment feels so challenging at times. It asks you to stop running. It asks you to stop negotiating with the past. It asks you to stop bargaining with the future. It asks you to stop believing that answers live anywhere except here. And that kind of honesty can feel like standing naked in front of yourself for the first time, unarmored, unguarded, undone. But beneath that vulnerability lies freedom, because when you stop escaping the present, you return to your power. Your past cannot create your future. Your fears cannot create your future. Your memories cannot create your future. Only the consciousness you hold right now has the authority to shift your timeline. Imagine that every moment is a brushstroke, painting your next chapter. Your thoughts are colors. Your emotions are texture. Your breath is the stroke itself. If you paint with anxiety, the next moment will echo anxiety. If you paint with openness, the next moment will soften. If you paint with gratitude, even quiet gratitude, the next moment gains warmth. If you paint with fear, the next moment tightens. The future is just the accumulation of the brushstrokes you apply to the present. There is no future separate from this moment. There is only this moment multiplying itself. And yet, people often cling to the idea of someday. Someday, I'll be peaceful. Someday, I'll be ready. Someday, I'll feel worthy. Someday, I'll slow down. Someday, life will make sense. But someday is a trap. Someday is a story the mind uses to avoid the discomfort of presence. Someday is a way of postponing your own becoming. And someday never arrives because it cannot. It does not exist. Only now exists. Only here exists. Only this breath exists. The present is the stage on which every timeline plays out. When you awaken to this, even for a fleeting second, you begin to understand why spiritual teachings across centuries emphasize presence. It is not because presence is peaceful. It is because presence is creative. When you become fully present, you step into the control room of your reality. Suddenly, the past loses its authority. Suddenly, the future loses its weight. Suddenly, you are not the echo of what has been, but the architect of what will be. And you do not build through force. You build through frequency. The present moment asks only one thing from you: honesty. Not perfection, not optimism, just honesty. If you are afraid, be present with the fear instead of running. If you are sad, be present with the sadness instead of escaping. If you are hopeful, be present with the hope instead of clinging to outcomes. Presence does not require you to feel good. Presence requires you to feel truthfully. A single honest breath will open your field more than an hour of forced positivity ever could. Because presence is raw, presence is tender, presence is real, and the universe responds only to what is real. When you bring your awareness into your body, into your chest, into your breath, into the subtle sensations, rhythmically rising and falling within you, you reclaim the energy that was scattered across past regrets and future anxieties. You return to the engine room of creation. You return to the still point from which all movement begins. Presence is not about sitting quietly. It is about returning your power to the only place it ever lived. Right here. In this heartbeat, in this breath, in this awareness. When you dissolve into the present moment, even briefly, you may feel an unexpected spaciousness, an inner clearing. That clearing is your alignment. That clearing is your signal becoming coherent. That clearing is what the quantum field responds to. Because in that clearing, you are no longer vibrating with past wounds or future fear. You are vibrating with truth, your truth, the truth of your being in this exact moment. And that truth is what shapes the next moment, and the next, and the next. Momentum builds not from effort, but from presence. Manifestation unfolds not through pressure, but through frequency. Every future you seek is sitting just outside your awareness, waiting for the moment you become present enough to match it. And when you do, when you fully step into the now, your future steps forward to meet you, not with force, but with recognition, not with struggle, but with inevitability, because you did not chase it. You did not beg for it. You did not force it. You became the version of yourself who could finally receive it. And that version of you can only exist in the present moment, the only doorway that has ever truly been open. You are the field remembering itself. There comes a moment, often not announced by any grand revelation, when all the pieces you've been gathering, your awareness, your healing, your small awakenings scattered through years of living begin to settle into place. Not with noise, not with celebration, but with a kind of quiet recognition that feels like exhaling after a lifetime of holding your breath. And in that stillness, you finally understand something so simple that it almost feels like you always knew it. You were never learning to create reality. You were reality learning to remember its own power. You begin to see that you are not a separate being trying to manipulate the universe from the outside. You are the universe expressing itself as a person, learning to open the channels through which it flows. You are not pushing reality forward. You are allowing it to reveal itself through your presence, your vibration, your willingness to soften into who you already are beneath the noise. There were never any locked doors. There were never any hidden secrets. There was only your readiness to perceive what was always here. Every truth you've discovered along this path has been a remembering, not an achievement. Every insight has been a gentle homecoming. Every shift has been a return to the awareness you carried long before fear began to whisper other stories. When these pieces come together, you feel something settle inside you, a sense that the struggle was never required. Only the openness, only the slowing down, only the willingness to stop gripping the edges of your own becoming. And from that softness, life begins to move differently. What once felt like miracles now feel like natural consequences of your alignment. What once felt like coincidences now feel like familiar threads of a larger intelligence. What once felt random now feels exquisitely intentional. Synchronicities stop surprising you. Opportunities stop confusing you. Guidance stops feeling far away. Because you start to recognize that every moment is an echo of your own field, your own coherence, your own clarity, your own unfolding intelligence. Life is not happening to you. It is happening through you. And the person you kept trying so hard to become, the wiser you, the calmer you, the grounded you, the version of yourself who moves with trust instead of fear, reveals itself as someone who was never far, never distant, never out of reach. That version of you wasn't something to build. It was something to uncover. It was always sitting quietly beneath your efforts, waiting for you to stop trying to perform your way into enlightenment and simply allow yourself to return to your original vibration. Truth has always been an unmasking, and as you live from this place, not perfectly, not constantly, but more and more each day, you begin to notice how reality rearranges itself with less resistance and more grace. You no longer chase signs. They come uninvited. You no longer strain for answers. They rise naturally in stillness. You no longer fear the unknown. You meet it with the familiarity of something you've already touched in your deeper self. Because you finally understand that the field you seek, the intelligence you call the universe, the guidance you call intuition, the support you call synchronicity does not live outside of you. It never did. It expresses itself through your breath, your awareness, your willingness to be present, your ability to feel truth when it vibrates softly in your chest. You are not trying to plug into the field. You are the field. You are the consciousness generating the signal. You are the awareness shaping the form. You are the vibration calling the future timelines toward you. And every time you remember this, even for a moment, you step into a version of yourself that feels strangely familiar. Like someone you lost once and have finally found again. This recognition doesn't make life easier in the sense of removing challenges. but it makes life gentler. You stop fighting what is. You stop doubting your path. You stop questioning your timing. You begin moving with life rather than against it. You begin allowing rather than forcing. You begin trusting rather than gripping. And in that trust, the world feels less chaotic and more like a conversation between your inner state and the outer experience that reflects it. Creation becomes softer. Healing becomes calmer. Awakening becomes quieter. Nothing dramatic needs to happen. You simply become more yourself. And as you do, you feel something settle into place. A deep knowing that the person you once strained to become was never a future version. They were the present version waiting for your awareness to return. They were the soul beneath the stories. They were the field beneath the fear. They were the truth beneath the identity. You are the field, remembering itself. You are the one waking from the long dream of separation. You are the awareness lifting its own veil. And as that veil dissolves, the world softens with you. Miracles stop being miracles and start being the natural expression of coherence. Synchronicities stop being signs and start being the language of your everyday life. And the person you thought you had to chase becomes the person you finally allow yourself to be. Not someday, not when you arrive, but now, in this breath, in this awareness, in this quiet moment where you finally remember what was true all along.